Chapter 3057. After a long while, everyone gradually calmed down. The clamor and discussion in the field were much softer than before. The challenge continued. Before Zhenhong could step onto the stage, a noble youth dressed in a brocade robe took the lead and flew onto the stage. Many people recognized him and shouted his name loudly. Xianxia. It's Xianxia. You are indeed very courageous. No wonder you are the genius who fought Tianqing without being injured. That's right, that young noble was Xianxia. Previously, when he was challenged by Ji Tianqing, he had forced himself to put on an act and deceived countless people. That was why he had not been condemned and despised. At this moment, Ji Tianqing's challenge ended. On the other hand, he had preserved his strength and was in his peak condition. Thus, he confidently stepped onto the stage. He stood on the arena and called out the names of a few geniuses in high spirits. I want to challenge Gu Chunfeng, Shi Yuanlong, Qin Yun, Zhenhong, Ziman Luo, Shi Yunxiao and Zhou Xian. Other than Ji Tianqing, all the geniuses in the top 9 were challenged by him. The third prince announced loudly, due to Shi Yunxiao's death from self-detonation, Zhou Xian and Ziman Luo had to leave the stage with heavy injuries. Therefore Xianxia won without a fight, and he even won 3 rounds consecutively. This result sounded shocking, but it was within everyone's expectations. Everyone knew that this was all thanks to Ji Tianqing. If not for him defeating those 3 people, how could Xianxia pick up this bargain? After 3 consecutive victories, Xianxia began to fight Gu Chunfeng. Gu Chunfeng was on the same level as him, but the difference was in their foundation and secret techniques. The two of them fought for a quarter of an hour in the ring, exchanging more than 300 moves. Both of them suffered some minor injuries before the victor was decided. In the end, Gu Chunfeng was defeated and Xianxia won 4 consecutive victories. Following that, Shi Yuanlong stepped onto the battle stage and fought Xianxia on the spot. Originally, Shi Yuanlong's strength was slightly weaker than Xianxia's. However, Xianxia had just fought a battle and he had used up a lot of his divine power. He was also injured. After exchanging over 1,000 moves, Xianxia was finally able to defeat Shi Yuanlong and obtain 5 consecutive victories. Without waiting for Xianxia to recover, Qin Yun went up to the fighting ring again. At this time, Xianxia's appearance was somewhat wretched and he was panting heavily. He only had about 70% of his strength left, and his battle prowess was greatly reduced. However, Qin Yun was slightly weaker than him. Under normal circumstances, Qin Yun would not be his match. But now, Xianxia's condition was not good and he could not defeat Qin Yun. Knowing this result in his heart, Xianxia did not waste any more effort and directly admitted defeat. As such, Qin Yun had won the battle. Xianxia was also given an hour to rest. Seizing this opportunity, he hurriedly consumed a divine pill to suppress his injuries and recover his divine power. An hour later, he had recovered a lot and continued to challenge Zhenhong. This was Zhenhong's first challenge, but it was also Xianxia's last battle. Everyone expected that this would be an exciting battle. As expected, on the arena, the two of them displayed their unparalleled talents and performed all kinds of magnificent and powerful secret skills. Although they had only exchanged more than 40 blows, the outcome was decided. But every blow was brilliant and magnificent, causing the hearts of the millions of deity clan members to sway, and they were emotional. This was especially true for Zhenhong's dragon race techniques, which were incomparably beautiful and powerful. They pierced through the heavens and were extremely powerful. But it was a pity. In the end, the result was not satisfactory. Even after she had used her trump card and entered a state of rage, becoming 1,000 feet tall dragon god, she still could not defeat Xianxia. After all, she was only a lower Sir God a few days ago. After breaking through to a middle Sir God, she had not mastered the dragon tribe unique skill for long and was not proficient enough to use it freely. As for Xianxia, he had reached level 6 Sir God 20 years ago. And 300 years ago he had broken through to level 4 Sir God and become a middle Sir God. In comparison, Xianxia's strength was more profound and he had more battle experience. He was also more proficient in the use of various super skills and secret skills. Zhenhong's defeat was not unjustified. Of course, in fact, she still had 2 trump cards that she had not used for a long time. If she used those 2 trump cards, she would definitely be able to defeat Xianxia. However, the price of using those 2 trump cards was too high. Even if she defeated Xianxia, she would be severely injured. Next, she would definitely be defeated miserably when she faced Gu Chunfeng, Shi Yuanlong, Qin Yun and the others. After weighing the pros and cons, Zhenhong chose to preserve her strength and admitted defeat to Shang-Chi. After the battle, the third prince announced Shang-Chi's results. 6 wins and 1 loss. In addition to the match where he was challenged by Ji Tianxing and admitted defeat in public, it was 6 wins and 2 losses. This result was already very impressive, second only to Ji Tianxing's 7 consecutive victories. Then Zhenhong went up the stage to challenge again. She challenged 6 people: Gu Chunfeng, Shi Yuanlong, Qin Yun, Ziman Luo and the others. She would definitely not challenge Ji Tianxing. She had already been defeated by Shang-Chi and there was no need for her to challenge him again. The third prince announced that Zhenhong had automatically won 3 consecutive victories. Her challenge targets were only Gu Chunfeng and the other 2. Her opponents went up the stage one after another and fought with her on the stage. In the first round, she defeated Gu Chunfeng with 9 moves from the Dragon Tribe. In the second round, she defeated Shi Yuanlong with 8 moves. In the third round, Qin Yun's strength was preserved and he was in good condition. Zhenhong spent 100 breaths of time and used 12 moves from the Dragon Tribe to defeat Qin Yun. Her challenge had ended. The third prince announced that her results were also 6 wins and 2 losses. When they heard the results, the crowd cheered and exclaimed. Many people were shocked and they could not believe it. Before the divine blood ceremony this time, she was just a nameless maid captain. Now she was a top genius who was the focus of everyone's attention and she was almost on par with Shang-Chi. After today, her name and deeds would definitely spread out of Monarch City and Bloodflame Holy Kingdom. Even though the challenge had to continue, the limelight had been stolen by Ji Tianxing, Shang-Chi and Zhenhong. Even though Gu Chunfeng, Shi Yuanlong and the other 2 went up the stage to fight, it did not cause much of a stir. After 2 hours the challenges were all over. The third prince and second prince announced the final rankings. This year's Divine Blood ceremony has come to a successful end. In the arena competition this time, everyone had witnessed peerlessly brilliant spars and witnessed the birth of miracles. For our Blood Flame Divine Kingdom to be able to produce so many outstanding geniuses, it's truly a blessing to the Divine Kingdom and its people. I will now announce the final rankings of the Fighting Ring competition. The first place belonged to the strongest person who had won 7 consecutive victories, Tianxing. The second place belongs to Shang-Chi, who had won 6 consecutive victories and lost 2. The third place belongs to Zhenhong, who had also won 6 consecutive victories and lost 2. The fourth place belongs to Qin Yun. The fifth place belongs to Gu Chunfeng. The sixth place belongs to Shi Yuanlong. The seventh place belongs to... The last 3 places belonged to Zimen Luo, Shi Yunxiao and Zhou Xian. After all, they had ended up in the most miserable state. 2 of them had been seriously injured and 1 had died. Chapter 3058. The final ranking did not mean the end of the Divine Blood ceremony. Not only that, but the most sacred and exciting moment had arrived. The third prince held the God's edict and announced solemnly, "The divine nation has never been stingy with rewards and cultivation for outstanding geniuses of the divine path. The top 10 geniuses are not only qualified to enter the Blood Flame Secret Realm and receive the baptism of the Blood Flame Sacred Tree. The royal family has also taken out nearly 100 billion worth of resources and treasures from the treasury to reward the top 10 geniuses as a sign of recognition and encouragement." Then he announced the list of rewards for the top 10 geniuses. The 10th place had the least rewards while the first place had the most amazing rewards. The Flame Wolf Youth, who was ranked 10th, only received 2 billion God Stones. The 5th place Gu Chunfeng received 10 billion worth of resources and 2 sets of divine armor. The 3rd-ranked Zhenhong not only received 20 billion God Stones worth of cultivation resources, but he also received a set of armor and a divine saber. As for Ji Tianxing, he received 30 billion God Stones as well as 6 monarch high-grade divine weapons. Such generous rewards caused everyone to cheer and scream. Countless people were green with envy. Soon, the 2 captains of the imperial army carried the golden treasure chests onto the stage. The 2 princes opened the treasure chests and took out 10 divine rings to reward Ji Tianxing and the others. The atmosphere in the square immediately reached its peak. Millions of people of the divine race rejoiced as they excitedly discussed and exclaimed. Zhenhong was so excited that he could not control himself. He was extremely grateful to Ji Tianxing. She admitted that she had never seen so many god stones, elixirs, and resources in her life. If Ji Tianxing had not helped her rebirth, she might not have had the chance to own such a huge fortune in her life. She held the divine ring with both hands and kissed it excitedly. Then she gave the divine ring to Ji Tianxing. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing and Ning Xiyuan were stunned. They did not understand. Zhen Hong quickly explained, "Young master, whether it's the honor or the reward, everything I have is given to me by you. Please accept this reward. Otherwise, I won't be able to rest easy." Her mind was simple. Being able to awaken the dragon god's bloodline and obtain such an honor, as well as being qualified to receive the sacred tree's baptism, was already extremely fortunate. She didn't dare to monopolize such a generous reward. Understanding her intention, Ji Tianxing put on a smile and comforted her. "For me, more than 20 billion worth of resources and artifacts are not of much use. But for you, you just awakened your bloodline not long ago and you urgently need to cultivate in seclusion for a long time. You need cultivation resources the most right now. So it's best for you to keep these rewards." Ji Tianxing had never lacked cultivation resources. He already had 30 billion divine stones and various other resources stored in his interspatial ring. Moreover, the heaven-mending pearl also had the 5 elements world, which could continuously produce origin stones. In addition to the 30 billion plus reward he had just received, he would not lack cultivation resources for many years to come. What he really lacked was a godly item like the blood flame sacred tree. Zhen Hong still insisted on giving the reward to Ji Tianxing. Ning Xiyuan also tried to persuade her. Only then did she gradually give up on the idea. She anxiously accepted the divine ring. The rewards were given out. Only the top few geniuses remained. They would enter the blood flame secret realm later to receive the baptism of the sacred tree. It was time for everyone else to leave the arena. Not only the million god race clansmen on the plaza, but also the countless nobles and experts on the 4 viewing platforms left one after another. After all, the blood flame secret realm was a forbidden ground. Without the king's permission, no one could enter. No one knew what happened to the geniuses in the secret realm. On the way out of the plaza, countless god race citizens were still whispering to each other and reminiscing about the exciting battle. A full 2 hours later, the huge and crowded crowd gradually left the plaza and merged into the royal city. At this time, the 2 princes led Ji Tianxing and the others towards the royal palace in the north. The group flew through the sky and quickly entered the royal palace. They landed outside the Soul Prayer Hall. The black brick and red tile Soul Prayer Hall was over 10,000 feet tall and majestic. However, its aura was too solemn and dignified, causing one's heart to feel heavy and oppressed. Compared to the golden and dazzling palaces around it, it was out of place. Normally, the Soul Prayer Hall was closed for a long period of time. It would only be opened when major priest activities were held or when the divine blood ceremony was held. This was because the entrance to the blood flame secret realm was in the depths of the Soul Prayer Hall. The hall was heavily guarded. There were also hidden sentries underground and in the palace. They were all Sir God experts. Not only that, but the Soul Prayer Hall had also set up many top-grade divine arrays. Its defense was very strong. After the group arrived, they stood in the plaza outside the hall. Ji Tianxing, Zhen Hong, and the others waited patiently. The 2 princes entered the hall and took over from the imperial guards guarding the royal palace. There was no other way. The 800 imperial guards guarding the Soul Prayer Hall and the Dark Moon Commander were all under the direct command of the king. Even the 2 princes had no right to command the imperial guards and the Dark Moon Commander. While waiting, Ji Tianxing secretly observed the situation of the Soul Prayer Hall's defenses. He firmly remembered the positions of the sentries and the distribution of the defensive arrays. This was because the plan he had been planning for a long time was about to be realized. Ever since he learned about the blood flame sacred tree in the Sky Snow County city, he had already made up his mind. He was going to do something big. Something that would shock the entire blood flame divine kingdom. Everything he had done in the past month was to pave the way for today. The closer he was to success, the more he looked forward to it. However, he wasn't impatient. Instead, he became calmer and more careful. Xianxia, Zhen Hong, and the others didn't know that Ji Tianxing had other thoughts. Everyone was filled with joy and expectation as they curiously sized up the Soul Prayer Hall. Feeling the solemn atmosphere in the royal palace, everyone stood obediently. They didn't dare to move or make a ruckus. Occasionally, they would communicate with each other through voice transmissions, sharing their joy and expectations. Their focus was on questions like, what does the blood flame sacred tree look like? Is the secret realm dangerous? How do we receive the baptism of the sacred tree? Naive people like them couldn't imagine that the cold and low-key expert beside them would soon shock the royal palace and become the public enemy of the blood flame divine kingdom. After a while, the two princes finished negotiating with the Dark Moon commander and returned to the square. Everyone, please remain silent. Line up according to your ranking and follow this king into the great hall. The third prince waved his hand to signal for everyone to be quiet. He warned with a serious expression, after entering the soul prayer hall, remember not to look around or walk around casually. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask and don't touch what you shouldn't touch. This king will bring you into the secret realm and arrange places for you to wait for the baptism of the sacred tree. This is a great opportunity, but you only have 3 days. You must grasp it well. If you miss it, you will regret it for the rest of your life. After listening, the young geniuses nodded to show that they understood. The third prince revealed a satisfied smile and led everyone into the great hall. Chapter 30:59. The soul-praying palace was dimly lit and visibility was less than 10 zhang. Everyone walked in the palace and felt chills all over their bodies. In the spacious and quiet hall, there were many statues standing quietly in the dark corners. On the cold walls, there were many ancient and strange carvings and pictures. The young geniuses could feel that there were many pairs of eyes staring at them. However, they remembered the third prince's instructions and did not dare to look around or walk around. They also did not dare to use their soul consciousness. There was only one exception, and that was Zhou Xian. On the surface, his expression was indifferent as he followed behind the third prince, his eyes looking straight ahead. However, in reality he had secretly released his soul consciousness to check the situation inside the soul-praying palace. The 20 overseer gods hiding in the dark did not notice his soul consciousness and did not find anything unusual. However, in a secret room deep inside the soul-praying palace, there was an ancient bronze lamp that was shining with a pale blue light. The purple-robed man sitting cross-legged in front of the lamp had been meditating and using his soul consciousness to monitor the geniuses. Suddenly, he noticed that the ancient bronze lamp had lit up. He immediately frowned and shouted angrily, "Bastard! They look obedient, but they are secretly prying into the secrets of the temple. Which bastard is so arrogant and bold?" As he spoke, the purple-robed man used a secret technique to check the soul consciousness of Zhou Xian and the others. At this moment, a pair of dark red eyes lit up in the dark corner of the secret room. A hoarse and deep voice was heard as he said slowly, "Chima, there is no need to check. It must be that black-haired kid." The pair of eyes were cold and indifferent but had a high and mighty aura. The owner was a haggard old man. His hunched body was covered by a large black robe. He blended into the darkness and no one could see his face. However, his aura was enough to make all the Sir gods afraid. The purple-robed man lowered his head respectfully and said, "Dark Moon Ancestor, are you talking about Tianxing, who is the strongest? He has already won the championship and is qualified to go under the sacred tree to receive the most powerful divine power. Why did he want to pry into the secrets of the divine hall? Could it be that he has always been so arrogant and overbearing that he doesn't care about the rules of the divine hall or the dignity of the divine nation?" The black-robed old man, who was called the Dark Moon Ancestor, nodded slightly and said in an indifferent tone, "That's right. This person has no sense of belonging to Scandinavia and will never work for us. His Majesty has been paying attention to him for a long time." The purple-robed man was even more surprised. He asked in confusion, "If that's the case, why did the monarch allow him to participate in the competition and even win first place? He received so many resources and treasures and was even baptized by the sacred tree, but he couldn't serve the kingdom of God." The black-robed old man said slowly, "You don't have to get to the bottom of it. It's not important. This kid had made a grave mistake that could not be undone. His fate has already been decided by His Majesty. We just need to wait and see." The purple-robed man hurriedly nodded and said respectfully, "Thank you for your guidance, Ancestor. I understand." Then he stopped using his divine abilities and secret techniques and stopped monitoring Zhou Xian. Instead, he focused his attention on the others. 15 minutes later. The third prince led Ji Tianxing and the others into the underground of the Soul Prayer Palace. They came to a dark and cold hall with a radius of 3,000 meters. The floor of the hall was engraved with mysterious divine array patterns. In the corners of the hall, there were 8 ancient beast statues that were also glowing with a dim blood-red light. The entire hall was a large array that had already been activated and was in operation. In the middle of the hall, there was a 30-meter-tall door of light surrounded by blood-red flames. It emitted a mysterious and majestic aura. Without a doubt, this was the portal to the Blood Flame Secret Realm. The Blood Flame Secret Realm was not under the temple. It was deep under the palace, hidden in an alternate dimension. Apart from the monarchs, no one knew the exact location of the Blood Flame Secret Realm. Only 2 or 3 people had mastered the method to open the entrance to the secret realm. Before entering the secret realm, the third prince reminded them again, "Everyone continue to maintain the formation. After entering the secret realm with me, do not make any noise or walk around. I will arrange places for you. You only need to focus on cultivation and receive the baptism of the sacred tree. If anyone blasphemes the secret realm or the sacred tree or makes a mistake, they will be expelled from the secret realm immediately." Shang-Chi, Zhenhong, Gu Chunfeng, and the others quickly nodded to show that they understood. The third prince did not say anything else and stepped into the blood flame door first. Ji Tianxing followed closely behind. Then Shang-Chi and Zhenhong entered one after another. Swoosh! Swoosh! The blood flame door kept flashing with red light and swallowed everyone's figures. Everyone only saw a flash of blood-red light before they entered a special dimension. This was a very vast and dark dimension that was at least 10,000 miles wide. Under their feet was a dark and cold ground covered with ancient rocks. The air was cold and there were wisps of blood-red chi floating in the air. Once everyone breathed in, they felt their blood strengthen and their blood flow accelerate. In the depths of the darkness ahead, there was a huge blood-red fireball hanging in the air like the sun. It was the blood-red light emitted by that fireball that brought light to the dark dimension. There was no need for the third prince to introduce it. Everyone had already guessed that it was the national treasure, the Bloodfire Divine Tree. The third prince led everyone and walked silently on the wasteland. After walking for 3,000 miles, they finally reached the edge of the Blood Flame Sacred Tree. The dark dimension in front of them was filled with blood-red flames and was full of divine power. Beneath the feet of the crowd, a huge platform of 1,000 feet appeared. The platform was made of all kinds of divine stones and was dazzling purple in color. It contained a vast amount of divine power. The third prince pointed at the platform and introduced it to everyone. There are 10 divine blood platforms in the secret realm. Each one is taller than the last and is getting closer to the sacred tree. This is the outermost divine blood platform, 3,000 miles away from the sacred tree. Yanlang, this is your spot. You will cultivate here. In 3 days, the sacred tree will send down divine light 9 times. How much you can absorb will depend on your luck. Yanlang, who was ranked 10th, nodded solemnly. He then sat down cross-legged and started cultivating. He only had one chance to enter the Blood Flame Secret Realm in his life. He cherished this opportunity and did not want to waste a single second. After designating Yanlang's position, the third prince led everyone forward. After walking for 300 miles, they came across a second platform. This platform was closer to the sacred tree and was 3,000 feet tall. However, Shi Yunxiao, who was ranked 9th, was already dead. The group did not stop and continued to move forward. They passed by the 8th and 7th divine blood platforms and stopped at the 6th one. Shi Yuanlong, who was ranked 6th, stopped and sat down to cultivate. Next, Gu Chunfeng was arranged to sit on the 5th divine blood platform and Qin Yun sat on the 4th. Mobile version update website. Chapter 3060. There were fewer and fewer people behind the third prince. When they reached the third divine blood altar, Zhenhong stopped here. This divine blood altar was 1,500 feet tall and contained even more divine power. It was at least 6 times taller than the outermost divine blood altar. Moreover, standing on this altar, one could clearly see the blood flame sacred tree. It was a gigantic tree with a radius of 150 miles. Its entire body was translucent like red jade, and it stood on the highest divine blood altar. Towering blood-red divine flames coiled around the lush canopy that blotted out the sky and the sun, and they emanated divine energy fluctuations that caused one's heart to palpitate. From afar, the trunk of the sacred tree was as thick as a palace. It looked especially domineering and majestic. Zhenhong was just standing there, but her blood was boiling and her face was red with sweat. The air around her was filled with blood-colored divine flames, and they were actively drilling into her body. Even if she did nothing, her dragon god bloodline was rapidly strengthening, and her strength was constantly increasing. It is indeed worthy of being called the most mysterious and mystical secret realm. Cultivating here for 3 days is better than cultivating outside for 100 years. She praised from the bottom of her heart. She didn't need the third prince's instructions and sat down to cultivate. This wasn't an exaggeration. The divine power absorbed in 3 days in the blood flame secret realm might not be as good as cultivating outside for 100 years. However, the baptism of the sacred tree would strengthen one's bloodline and greatly increase one's talent, comprehension, and aptitude. This was an effect that couldn't be achieved even if one cultivated outside for 100 years. After Zhenhong settled down, the third prince led Ji Tianxing and Xianxia forward. After walking for another 150 miles, the three of them stopped at the second divine blood altar. This place was closer to the sacred tree, and the blood-colored divine flames gathered like an ocean, making it even more effective. Xianxia was so excited that his blood was boiling and he couldn't wait any longer. Without needing the third prince to say anything, he already sat down and focused on cultivating. Seeing this, the third prince looked at Ji Tianxing and said with a smile, "Tianxing, let's go." Ji Tianxing pointed at the tallest divine blood platform 300 kilometers away. He said, "It's just a few steps. I'll go by myself. Don't worry about me." The third prince thought for a moment and nodded with a smile. "That's good too. Go and practice by yourself. Don't waste time. I have already received the baptism of the sacred tree. My talent and bloodline have been strengthened to the limit. If you stay here for a while longer, not only will you not be able to increase your strength, you will also be in danger of damaging your foundation." After listening to his explanation, Ji Tianxing finally understood why a person could only be baptized by the sacred tree once. The third prince bade him farewell and turned to leave, quickly disappearing into the blood and fire. Ji Tianxing walked forward alone. He climbed up the first divine blood platform at a steady pace and arrived at the foot of the sacred tree. This divine blood altar was the core of the blood flame secret realm. At the same time, it was also the base of the blood flame sacred tree. The platform was 3,000 feet tall and had a radius of 500 miles. It was entirely purple with a hint of black. After being nurtured by the blood flame sacred tree for tens of thousands of years, the divine power it contained had already reached a terrifying level. Billions of thick roots extended from the bottom of the towering sacred tree and pierced into the divine blood altar, firmly connecting the two together. Ji Tianxing was not in a hurry to practice. He walked around the towering sacred tree on the platform and observed it attentively. The sacred tree was so close that he could unveil the mysterious halo of the sacred tree and see it more clearly. The surface of the tree trunk was slightly bloated and curved. It was covered with dark red veins like the blood vessels and meridians of a human. Anyone who saw it would believe that the blood flame sacred tree was not an ordinary object. It might even be alive. Although the sacred tree was big, it only had a trunk and branches. There were no leaves. However, when Ji Tianxing looked up, he saw that there were 9 basin-sized divine fruits hidden in the tree crown that covered the sky. Each divine fruit looked like a gourd. They were as exquisite as red jade, and blood-red divine fire flowed on the surface. They looked mysterious and alluring. Ji Tianxing stared at the 9 divine fruits and could not help but smile in relief. Those 9 divine fruits are the crystallization of the entire sacred tree. They contain the purest divine power. It seems that they have grown for at least 1,000 years to reach this size. Only the champion of the previous tournament of fighting rings is qualified to come under the tree and have the chance to find the divine fruits in the tree crown. However, other than the monarch, no one would dare to touch them, right? He muttered to himself, then waved his hand and shot out a beam of golden light toward one of the divine fruits. Swoosh! The golden light was like a knife. It cut off the branches on the divine fruit and wrapped it up, then flew back to Ji Tianxing. After successfully plucking a divine fruit, Ji Tianxing was not in a hurry to devour it. He stored it in the divine pagoda for safekeeping. Then he waved his right hand and shot out beams of golden light. Swoosh, swoosh. In just a few breaths' time, all 9 divine fruits were taken by him. Not a single one was left. He stopped contentedly and looked at the sacred tree with a smile. He muttered to himself, "The legend of the Bloodfire Kingdom is true. This tree is indeed formed by the blood souls of millions of deities. 10,000 years ago the sacred tree was only a few thousand feet tall. Now it has grown to 100,000 feet tall. However, this sacred tree is restricted by the laws of heaven. It can only be a quasi-king level sacred tree. It can't be a true king level sacred tree. What a pity. If it was a true king level sacred tree, I would definitely move it away and plant and cultivate it. By then, with the help of the sacred tree and divine fruits, Yao Yao and Ku will be able to break through to the God King realm." Ji Tianxing sighed regretfully. However, he thought about it again and let it go. Fortunately, the Bloodfire sacred tree was only a quasi-king level divine item. Could not cultivate a God King powerhouse. If it was a true king level sacred tree, it would have already cultivated a God King powerhouse. The Bloodfire Kingdom would have also annexed the Great Yan Empire and become the overlord of the northern region. If that was the case, he would not have the chance to obtain the Bloodfire sacred tree. Forget it. A quasi-king level sacred tree is enough. It is a top treasure for me now. After I obtain this sacred tree and devour it, I will be able to recover to the peak of the Divine Lord realm. I only have 3 days. I have to hurry. After Ji Tianxing made up his mind, he got rid of all distracting thoughts and sat cross-legged under the divine tree. He began to cultivate. Shang-Chi, Zhen Hong and the others were cultivating their own cultivation techniques. They absorbed the divine power and blood flames of heaven and earth and waited for the divine light of the sacred tree to descend. Ji Tianxing was different. He used the devour divine power. Black light gushed out of his palms and turned into 2 black vortexes. Swoosh, swoosh. The 2 black holes crazily devoured the blood flames and divine power, quickly stealing the power of the sacred tree. However, 15 minutes later, Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows. He used the devour divine power to steal the power of the sacred tree 100 times faster than the others. However, it was still not enough. The power of the Bloodfire sacred tree was too vast. Even if he kept devouring it, it would take him 10 years to completely devour it. Therefore, he decided to use the heaven-mending orb to uproot the sacred tree and move it away. He would move it into the divine pagoda or the sword world. Wouldn't it be perfect if he refined it slowly? Chapter 3061. Just do it. Ji Tianxing activated the power of the heaven-mending orb and released 2 beams of pure white light from his palms. Swoosh. The 2 beams of light flew towards the sacred tree and quickly wrapped around its thick trunk. Then Ji Tianxing unleashed a powerful force that could move mountains, trying to uproot the sacred tree. Ka ka ka. Crisp sounds kept bursting out, and the divine tree that covered the sky kept swaying. Millions of branches were swaying. Even the divine blood altar under Ji Tianxing's feet shook violently and kept flashing with purple light. The bloody flame sacred tree was shaken by Ji Tianxing. He was excited and activated the heaven-mending orb to release even more power, trying to uproot the sacred tree. However, no matter how hard he tried, no matter how much power he released, the bloody flame sacred tree shook violently, but it couldn't leave the divine blood altar. The divine tree's gigantic trunk and billions of branches all lit up with an extremely dazzling blood-red light, erupting with a terrifying power. The divine blood altar under Ji Tianxing's feet also lit up with purple fire and released a power that could suppress the world, firmly imprisoning the bloody flame sacred tree. Not only that, he also clearly sensed that the 10 divine blood altars around the sacred tree were releasing a violent power. The 10 divine blood altars formed a huge array that gathered the power of the entire bloody flame secret realm and firmly imprisoned the sacred tree. This way, the bloody flame sacred tree was sealed by the entire secret realm and couldn't be uprooted, unless he could destroy the 10 divine blood altars or destroy the entire secret realm. Otherwise, it was almost impossible for him to move the sacred tree. Understanding this, Ji Tianxing wasn't surprised, just a bit regretful. He had no choice but to give up on the idea of moving the sacred tree. After all, the 10 divine blood altars were burning with red fire and formed a divine array. Shang-Chi, Zhen Hong, Gu Chunfeng and the others were cultivating on the divine blood altars. They sensed that something was wrong, so they stopped cultivating and looked around in confusion. If they forcefully moved the sacred tree, they would be discovered. Moreover, the Dark Moon Commander and the others were monitoring the situation in the secret realm. Once Ji Tianxing destroyed the divine blood altar or forcefully attacked the secret realm, he would definitely be discovered by them. At that time, before he could move the sacred tree away, he would be besieged by countless powerhouses. The Blood Flame Divine Kingdom's imperial palace was filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. The number of high divine lords exceeded at least 10. With Ji Tianxing's current strength, it was impossible for him to fight his way out of the encirclement. It would be very difficult for him to leave the palace alive. Forget it. I'll devour the power of the sacred tree first and increase my strength. Moving the sacred tree rashly will only lead to a fatal disaster. Ji Tianxing sighed silently. He could only sit cross-legged under the sacred tree and continue to devour the power of the sacred tree. However, it was different this time. Not only did he use the devour divine power, but he also used the power of the heaven-mending pearl to frantically absorb the power of the sacred tree. Swoosh, swoosh. His palms turned into two black holes, constantly devouring the blood flame and divine power to strengthen himself. There was also a pure white vortex on his forehead, which was devouring the power of the sacred tree at a terrifying speed. That was the heaven-mending pearl, which was devouring divine power with all its might. The current heaven-mending pearl was not powerful enough, and its power was less than 20% of its peak. However, it was still a king-grade divine item and had unlimited power. As long as it was given enough time, it would definitely be able to devour the entire blood flame sacred tree. Just like that, the divine blood altar fell into silence. The power was withdrawn and the purple light also disappeared. The blood flame sacred tree also stopped trembling and returned to silence. Shang-Chi, Zhenhong and the others did not notice anything amiss. Seeing that the divine blood altar and the sacred tree had returned to silence, they dispelled their doubts and continued to cultivate. Ji Tianxing used the devour divine power to absorb the power of the blood flame sacred tree, which was 100 times faster than Shang-Chi and the others. Meanwhile, the heaven-mending pearl devoured the power of the sacred tree 100 times faster than him. This caused a violent hurricane to blow under the sacred tree. The blood flame and divine power in all directions were devoured by the three vortexes. Even the divine blood altar and the towering divine tree had produced thousands of tiny streams that flowed into the whirlpool. The power of the blood flame sacred tree was quickly draining away. Originally, the sacred tree would send down 9 beams of divine light within 3 days. On average, the sacred tree would scatter light every 8 hours to baptize the geniuses. However, something strange happened. Everyone cultivated for 10 hours, but the sacred tree did not scatter any divine light. It was not until the 6th hour that the sacred tree shone brightly and released a magnificent divine power ripple. Whoosh! With the blood flame sacred tree as the center, a dazzling blood-colored divine light spread out in all directions, covering an area of 30,000 miles. The mysterious divine light could cleanse everyone's impurities, strengthen their divine body and divine soul, and increase their talent and comprehension. In addition to the divine light baptism, the sacred tree also released thousands of purple divine power ripples that spread out like ripples. Those divine power ripples entered the bodies of the geniuses, causing their divine power to skyrocket and their strength to increase by leaps and bounds. Of course, the closer they were to the sacred tree, the greater the benefits. Whether it was the divine light or the divine power ripples, they would weaken as they spread out. Ji Tianxing sat under the sacred tree and benefited the most. His strength increased the fastest. As for the geniuses who were further away, their gains were greatly reduced. Especially the flame wolf youth who sat on the 10th divine blood altar, who was the furthest away from the blood flame sacred tree. After being baptized by the sacred tree, the effects were not obvious, and his strength did not increase by much. This made him puzzled. He frowned gloomily and thought to himself, before entering the secret realm, the third prince said that being baptized by the sacred tree was equivalent to 10 years of hard training. But I only gained so little from being baptized by the sacred tree? Even if I'm in the outermost circle and the furthest away from the sacred tree, it shouldn't be like this. Could it be that my talent is too low? Thinking of this, the flame wolf youth became even more gloomy and his eyes dimmed. But he could not imagine that the truth was that the blood flame sacred tree's power had weakened. Ji Tianxing and the heaven-mending orb crazily devoured the sacred tree's power. Not only did it delay the baptism by the sacred tree, but it also weakened the effects by half. Unfortunately, it was the first time these geniuses had entered the secret realm and received the baptism by the sacred tree. Even if the sacred tree's power had weakened and the baptism's effects weakened, they could not detect it. The first baptism by the sacred tree lasted for a full 100 breaths of time before it stopped. Under the sacred tree, Ji Tianxing, who was sitting cross-legged on the divine blood altar, emitted a golden light all over his body, and an incomparably holy and domineering aura fluctuated. He had finally broken through to the 4th-level Divine Lord realm, leaping to become a middle-level Divine Lord. When Xianxia, Zhenhong and the others saw the scene of him breaking through, they all revealed shocked expressions and exclaimed in their hearts. They did not expect that Ji Tianxing would break through on the spot after just one baptism by the sacred tree. And they were still very far away from breaking through. Their greatest gain was that their exhausted bodies and souls had recovered to their peak condition. The injuries they had suffered in the arena battles had also been healed by the sacred tree's baptism. Mobile version update website, M. Chapter 3062. After the sacred tree's baptism ended, the divine blood altar fell silent. The geniuses were a little disappointed and their emotions were complicated. Of course, they didn't doubt that the power of the bloody flame sacred tree had weakened. Firstly, there was no comparison, so they didn't know who was stronger. Secondly, Ji Tianxing had broken through on the spot and everyone had seen it. If the sacred tree's power had weakened, causing their strength to not increase much, then how did Ji Tianxing break through? In the end, they could only blame themselves for not being talented enough. Look at young Master Tianxing, he was indeed the #1 genius in the kingdom. The difference was too big. Everyone was depressed, but they could only work harder to cultivate and wait for the next sacred tree baptism. Unknowingly, another 12 hours had passed. Ji Tianxing was still using the devouring divine power, using the 2 black holes to absorb the power of the sacred tree. After breaking through to stage 4, he quickly solidified his foundation of the divine Tao. Now he had accumulated infinite divine power and was moving towards stage 5. The white light vortex on his forehead had already expanded to a radius of 100 feet, like an abyss, crazily devouring the power of the sacred tree. The heaven-mending pearl was indeed a supreme artifact. In the past day, it had devoured 100 times more divine power than Ji Tianxing. Even so, it had only recovered 30% of its power. However, the power of the bloody flame sacred tree had obviously weakened. The appearance of the sacred tree didn't change, but the blood-colored divine flames on its hundreds of millions of branches had dimmed. Logically speaking, the second sacred tree baptism should have arrived. However, the geniuses continued to wait for 6 hours before the sacred tree baptism arrived. Zhoush. The towering sacred tree bloomed with divine light, covering a radius of more than 20,000 miles and releasing millions of divine power ripples. The baptism and divine power ripples spread out with the sacred tree as the center. During the process, it kept weakening until it completely disappeared at the 10th divine blood altar. Ji Tianxing was unaffected and continued to focus on his cultivation. Xianxia, Zhenhong, Qingyun and the rest realized that the effect of the sacred tree's baptism was weaker than the previous time. As for Yanlang, who was on the 10th divine blood altar at the outermost circle, he was so depressed that he was about to cry. The second baptism of the sacred tree was about to happen. The blood-red divine light that blotted out the sky finally flew towards him as it continued to weaken. However, when the divine light reached the 10th altar, it completely dissipated. He was just a few miles away from being baptized by the divine light. The divine power ripples that filled the sky also dissipated and disappeared as soon as they reached his feet. When he saw this scene, the flame wolf youth really wanted to cry but had no tears. Sacred tree, sacred tree. I was wrong. During the first divine light baptism, I shouldn't have complained that the effect was too weak. This time I can't even receive the baptism of the divine light. Could it be that the sacred tree has a spirit and this is your punishment for me? I won't dare to complain anymore. I just hope that the next time you release the divine light baptism, let me have a little bit of it. Thinking back to the previous divine light baptism, although the effect wasn't great, it was still extremely blissful. The flame wolf youth pulled a long face and could only sit on the divine blood altar and cultivate even harder. At the same time he prayed silently in his heart, hoping that the sacred tree could hear his thoughts. The next divine light baptism would at least benefit him a little. It was better than nothing. Time passed quietly. Soon another day had passed. There were a total of 3 days and 2 days had already passed. There were a total of 9 divine light baptisms, but only 2 had happened and the 3rd baptism had yet to appear. Xianxia, Qin and the rest were all muttering in their hearts. Not only that, they also clearly felt that the blood flame and divine power in the air had weakened by more than half. If they continued to cultivate like before, they would gain less and their strength would increase slower. Everyone was puzzled and secretly looked at the blood flame sacred tree in the sky. The blood-red divine light that blotted out the sky dimmed a little. Even the size of the blood flame and divine light had shrunk significantly. This scene made everyone even more puzzled and anxious. What's going on? The power of the sacred tree is weakening? Didn't they say that there would be 9 divine light baptisms? 2 days have passed and there hasn't even been a 3rd baptism. Before entering the mystery land, everyone said that this was a great opportunity. Cultivating here for 3 days and receiving 9 divine light baptisms would be equivalent to cultivating outside for 100 years. But now the harvest is not even comparable to cultivating for 30 years. Why is this happening? Is there a problem with the blood flame sacred tree? It shouldn't be. The sacred tree is the treasure of the country. How could there be a problem? Could it be caused by Tianxing? He is the most powerful and talented and he is sitting under the sacred tree. Perhaps he has seized too much divine power and snatched away the portion that belongs to us? The young geniuses were all guessing and worried. But they remembered the 3rd prince's instructions and did not dare to move around or ask. At this moment, the highest divine blood altar lit up with a golden light that shot into the sky. It was sacred and majestic. In fact, 3 golden dragons could be vaguely seen flying and roaring within the golden light that soared into the sky. A formidable aura came from the distance. The young geniuses were shocked and jealous when they saw this scene. The same thought flashed through their minds. Tianxing broke through again. Oh my god. He broke through 2 realms in just 2 days? Isn't he a 7th heaven upper divine lord? If he broke through twice, wouldn't he reach the 9th heaven realm? He reached the 9th heaven realm from the 7th heaven realm in 2 days. How is this possible? Even the most monstrous genius in the kingdom of gods would have to cultivate for thousands of years to achieve this. Crazy. We must be crazy. We might as well cultivate for 30 years instead of 2 days here. But he broke through 2 realms in just 2 days. Could it be that the blood flame sacred tree only baptized and blessed him? Besides being shocked, Zhenhong was happy and proud for Ji Tianxing. The other young geniuses were shocked by Ji Tianxing and jealousy grew in their hearts. They could not accept this result. The contrast was too big and it made them lose their minds. But no matter how jealous and angry they were, what could they do? They could not run to the sacred tree and fight with Ji Tianxing for a spot, right? Or blame him with righteous indignation. How could they blame others for being monstrous when they were not capable? The geniuses could not do such a thing and they could not bring themselves to do it. Moreover, if they did that, they would be violating the rules of the royal family and would be expelled from the mystic territory immediately. Helpless, they could only suppress their anger and jealousy. After an entire hour, everyone's emotions finally calmed down, and they continued to meditate and cultivate. Fortunately, the 3rd divine light baptism came at this time. Swoosh. Swoosh. The dazzling blood-red divine light and thousands of purple ripples spread in all directions. Chapter 3063. The 3rd divine light baptism finally came. The few geniuses who were indignant were finally comforted. They quickly focused and accepted the divine light baptism to refine the divine power ripples. But this time the effect of the divine light baptism was even weaker. The range of the divine light and divine power ripples had shrunk to a radius of 20,000 miles. The flame wolf youth in the outermost circle saw the divine light and divine power ripples dissipate 10,000 miles away from him. In other words, the 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th divine blood altar did not receive the divine light baptism. The flame wolf youth almost broke down. With tears in his eyes, he looked at the bloody flame sacred tree 30,000 miles away and knelt down on the ground. Sacred tree, why are you so heartless and unwilling to show me any mercy? I am loyal to the kingdom and I respect you even more. I treat you like a believer. But you... why are you doing this? The flame wolf youth was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. He even wanted to turn around and leave in a fit of anger. But he quickly suppressed this impulsive thought. Not to mention that he could not leave on his own. Even if he could leave the mystic land, he would be slandered and slandered by the world. Not only that, the royal family would also punish him. This was blasphemy against the sacred tree and his ancestors. The flame wolf youth could only endure the grief and pain and continue to meditate and cultivate. Since he could not receive the divine light baptism, he could only absorb the scattered bloody flame and divine power. As for the effect, it was better than cultivating outside. It was better than nothing. Shangqi, Zhenhong, Qin Yun, Gu Chunfeng and Xiyuanlong had just received the divine light baptism and were fully focused on cultivating. At the same time, Ji Tianxing, who was under the sacred tree, slowly opened his eyes. He had just broken through to the 5th level of the Divine Lord realm and his strength had increased by several times. His current combat strength was much stronger than before. Even if he met the purple-robed elder under Prince Lian again, he would be able to defeat the 8th level Divine Lord. As his strength increased, his perception also increased rapidly. Before this, the entire Blood Flame secret realm was still somewhat hazy and mysterious to him. But now, when he used his divine sense to explore the secret realm, he could see through the layers of fog and touch upon many truths. He could clearly tell that this Blood Flame secret realm was a quasi-king level space with a radius of 36,000 miles. Inside the secret realm, the sacred tree and the 10 divine blood altars combined into one, forming a supreme monarch-level divine formation. Unless a god-king expert came in person, no one would be able to destroy the secret realm, much less move the sacred tree. Ji Tianxing stared at the sacred tree and observed it carefully. He could see the problem. After 2 days of devouring by him and the heaven-mending orb, the sacred tree's power had weakened by 30%. The sacred tree was sentient and would instinctively protect itself by withdrawing the overflowing energy and stabilizing itself. It was supposed to release divine light 3 times a day, once every 8 hours. However, as its power was rapidly depleting, it slowed down the speed at which it released the divine light, greatly reducing the number of times it could use it. Even so, it wasn't a living being and didn't have any intelligence. It still couldn't resist the heaven-mending orb's devouring, and its power was still depleting. Ji Tianxing estimated that the heaven-mending orb would be able to devour the sacred tree in another 5 days. He checked the heaven-mending orb situation. The heaven-mending orb had devoured 30% of the sacred tree's power, but it hadn't been purified or refined yet. It was all stored inside the divine orb. Ji Tianxing was very satisfied with this. After all, after he left the palace, he could still refine the sacred tree's power and continue to increase his strength. The divine power stored in the heaven-mending orb could help him recover to the peak of the monarch god level. It could also help Yun Yao, Ji Ku and the others quickly increase their strength. Now that my strength has increased by more than 10 times, I can understand the mysteries of the Blood Flame secret realm. The sacred tree's power has been weakened by 30%, so it's not as powerful as before. The time is finally ripe. It shouldn't be difficult for me to move the sacred tree now. After understanding the situation, Ji Tianxing weighed the pros and cons and made up his mind. There was only 1 day left and the conditions were ripe. If he didn't take the sacred tree now, when would he? So Ji Tianxing used the power of the heaven-mending orb and sent out 2 giant white palms, which grabbed the trunk of the sacred tree tightly. Rise! With a low roar, he suddenly unleashed all of his power. The 2 blazing white palms grabbed the god tree and lifted it up with a force that could move mountains. Suddenly, the blood flame sacred tree started to shake violently again. The divine blood altar under the tree shook crazily and flashed with purple light. As Ji Tianxing continued to use his power, the divine blood altar made cracking sounds. A series of zigzagging cracks appeared on the ground and quickly spread to the surroundings. However, the blood flame sacred tree was in danger. The 10 divine blood altars immediately connected with divine power and lit up with purple light, forming a supreme-grade divine array. The array within 30,000 miles started to operate and absorbed the power of the entire secret realm. It sealed the area and suppressed the sacred tree. Ji Tianxing's power was blocked, and the blood flame sacred tree started to shake less and more steadily. It looked like he was going to fail again. However, he was confident. With a calm expression, he cast a secret technique and continuously shot out tens of thousands of beams of divine golden light towards the divine tree. Bang bang bang. Thousands of beams of divine golden light cut into the divine blood altars around the sacred tree. Suddenly, the supreme-grade divine array was cut off by the divine golden light. The power of the array was blocked and its power decreased greatly. Obviously, Ji Tianxing had already seen through the supreme-grade monarch-grade divine formation and found the veins, nodes and key positions of the grand formation. He didn't want to waste time and slowly deciphered the array. He used the simplest and most violent method to destroy the array and weaken its power. This method was effective. The divine array that covered 30,000 miles started to operate slower and slower, and its power decreased. Even the 10 divine blood altars dimmed and started to shake violently. Several divine blood altars couldn't withstand the pull of the 2 divine powers. Huge cracks appeared on them and they started to fall apart. Kacha kacha. Bang 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 bang. Explosions and muffled sounds continued to ring out from the secret realm. The young geniuses were all awakened by this huge commotion. They stopped cultivating and checked the situation in confusion. Ji Tianxing noticed that everyone was awakened. He couldn't help but frown and mumble. Since the commotion is too big, there's no turning back. We can only do it in one go. So he sent out 3,000 beams of divine golden light into the various nodes of the divine array. The array was severely damaged again and its power decreased again. The power that imprisoned the sacred tree started to weaken rapidly. The divine blood altars that wrapped around the tree's roots also started to fall apart. Ji Tianxing controlled the 2 gigantic palms and held the divine tree firmly, uprooting it bit by bit. At this moment, just above the bloody flame sacred tree at the highest point of the secret realm, a 7-colored divine light suddenly lit up. A domineering roar exploded like a clap of thunder. Bastard, you really are up to no good. You want to destroy the foundation of my race. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 3064. The sudden thunderous roar woke everyone up. With the appearance of the 7-colored holy light, an invisible force pressed down from the sky. Ji Tianxing, Xianxia, Zhenhong and the rest opened their eyes wide and looked up at the sky. The 7-colored holy light landed on the top of the bloody flame sacred tree. A towering figure of the god clan that was thousands of feet tall stepped out of the divine light. This was a tall and sturdy man from the blood flame divine clan. He had a dignified appearance. He looked dignified with a wide forehead, a square nose and a pair of bell-like eyes that shone with a terrifying light. He wore a dark golden dragon robe and had a double dragon crown on his head. He exuded a domineering aura. Even though he was only standing on the top of the bloody flame and looking down at everyone with a majestic face, everyone could clearly feel that the area around them was covered by the supreme force. The incomparably powerful pressure caused everyone's hearts to tremble, and a deep sense of fear emerged from their souls. Immediately Shang-Chi, Qin Yun, Gu Chunfeng and the rest knelt on the ground. Everyone lowered their heads and bowed respectfully. They shouted, "The people of the Bloody Flame Holy Kingdom greet your majesty." The identity of the man in the golden robe was obvious. He was the ruler of the Bloody Flame Holy Kingdom, the current king. However, the king ignored Shang-Chi, Qin Yun and the rest. His eyes were majestic and sharp as he looked at Ji Tianxing, who was under the sacred tree. Ji Tianxing stood in the air and was still controlling the bloody flame sacred tree with his 2 huge palms. The divine blood stage under his feet had been torn apart and broken into pieces. The hundreds of millions of roots of the sacred tree had been exposed and were being pulled out bit by bit. Seeing this, the king did not need to say anything. The few young geniuses already understood everything. Instantly, everyone was horrified. They widened their eyes in fear and panic. Oh my God! What is he doing? He wants to destroy the sacred tree. That is the treasure of the Bloody Flame Holy Kingdom, the fruit of the efforts of millions of ancestors. He actually wants to uproot the entire divine tree. I really didn't expect this person to harbor such malicious intentions and be so audacious. Is he a spy from another kingdom who has infiltrated our country to destroy the sacred tree? How despicable! How can he be so despicable? Luckily, the king is wise and found out about his despicable plot and stopped him personally. No wonder we did not gain much after cultivating here for a few days. No wonder the power of the divine tree has weakened, and even the number of divine light baptisms has decreased. It's his fault. He's the main culprit. He deserves to die. Xianxia, Qingyun and the rest were all shocked and angry as they exclaimed and discussed. Unfortunately, the monarch was present, so they could only stay on the divine blood platform, not daring to act rashly. If that wasn't the case, they would have gathered together and condemned Ji Tianxing with righteous indignation. However, there was only one person who didn't utter a word and didn't reveal any hatred. She was Zhenhong. When she saw the king and Ji Tianxing's actions, she understood the whole story. She looked at Ji Tianxing with a complicated expression and thought to herself, no wonder young master did not form an alliance with the two princes and did not care about his status and wealth. As he said before, he is just a passerby in the bloody flame holy kingdom. I do not believe that he is a spy from another kingdom. Because he is so arrogant and powerful, he does not want to work for any holy kingdom. No wonder he did not care about the 20 billion resources when he asked me to accept them. As it turns out, his goal wasn't the wealth but the blood flame divine tree. At this moment, Zhenhong finally understood everything. Her eyes were full of admiration and she muttered to herself, maybe this is young master's true colors. Unrestrained, daring, looking down on the world and doing things his own way. Only a genius like him is qualified to do so. At this moment, when the king saw that Ji Tianxing was still uprooting the tree, he became even more furious. Bastard! You are about to die and you still don't know how to repent? The king shouted and his body emitted a seven-colored light. He suddenly raised his right foot and stomped down with all his strength. Boom! A violent divine might that could suppress heaven and earth pressed down on the bloody fire sacred tree. Ji Tianxing had just uprooted the sacred tree 100 feet high when the king stepped on it again. Not only that, the king was completely enraged. He gathered the power of the entire bloody flame secret realm and used it on himself as if the god of war had arrived. With one foot on the bloody flame sacred tree, he raised the other foot and stomped on Ji Tianxing. This stomp was like a meteor falling and a giant mountain pressing down. Ji Tianxing was under great pressure and had to stop uprooting the tree and deal with the king first. Heaven-piercing sword. He took out the sword of burial of heaven, held the sword with both hands and unleashed all his power and stabbed at the king. 1,000 feet long sacred sword appeared and stabbed at the king's left foot with endless power. Kaboom! In the deafening sound, the golden sword collided with the king and thousands of divine light shards burst out. The sacred sword collapsed. But what was shocking was that the king's left foot also exploded and even his calf was gone. The incomparably violent impact sent him flying hundreds of miles away. He staggered and stopped in midair. Xianxia and Qingyun were not the only ones who were shocked and exclaimed in disbelief. The king's face changed and he stared at Ji Tianxing angrily. He shouted, "Bastard, you have broken through again? In just a few days your strength has increased by more than 10 times?" The king, who had been majestic just a moment ago, was shocked and lost his composure. Hearing what he said, Ji Tianxing frowned and sneered, "So, you have been watching me secretly for a long time?" The king was stunned and his face turned ugly. He glanced at Xianxia, Zhenhong, Qingyun and the rest and waved his hand, sending out divine light. Swoosh! The 7-colored divine light entered the few divine blood altars and activated the broken array, releasing vast spatial power. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A few white lights flashed and Xianxia, Zhenhong and the rest were expelled from the blood flame secret realm. In the next moment, they were back in the palace and appeared in the square outside the soul praying hall. The two princes were not present as they were busy with their own things. There were only a few dozen guards around the square. Xianxia, Zhenhong and the rest looked around in confusion and did not know what to do. What is going on? Why are we out? It was the monarch who chased us out. Why did the king expel us? Does he want to be alone with Tianxing to settle the score? What do you mean by settling the score? The king wants to clean up the mess and kill Tianxing. Only Ji Tianxing and the king were left in the blood flame secret realm. At this moment the monarch no longer concealed himself and revealed his true face. He sneered coldly. "That's right. This monarch has always been secretly watching you, just to prevent this day from coming. As the saying goes, those who are not of the same race are not of the same mind. I have long guessed that you have evil intentions and want to harm the holy nation. The facts have proven that I have guessed correctly. Not only have you interfered in the fight for the throne, but you have also tried to steal the sacred tree. You have committed a heinous crime. Translator. Timothy_editor. Globeglotter. Chapter 3065. Ji Tianxing was already mentally prepared. When he was in Green Mountain City, he stole the mysterious light cave, destroyed the city lord's residence, and even helped Qi Tianlong become the city lord. Since then, the king had probably noticed him. Later, he killed Princess Tianfeng and destroyed the Blood Sword sect. The king must have known about this series of shocking events. When he came to the royal city, he was very close to the second prince and the third prince. He also fought the fifth prince to the death and even fought a big battle in West Wind Town. These news and inside stories couldn't be hidden from the king. Ji Tianxing guessed that with the king's wisdom and shrewdness, he would definitely be able to guess his motives. Sure enough. At the critical moment when he was fighting for the sacred tree, the king personally took action. Since you've told me the truth, then I have nothing to say. Ji Tianxing looked at the king indifferently and sneered. Which prince you want to pass the throne to is your business. I can't control it and I don't want to control it. I don't care about the wealth and status of the blood flame divine kingdom. Only this blood flame sacred tree can arouse my interest. I must have it. Haha. The king looked down at him and sneered arrogantly. I believe that with your talent and aptitude, you really don't care about anything else. You only want to snatch the sacred tree. But in the past 10,000 years, who knows how many upper divine lords have tried to snatch the sacred tree. In the end, they all failed and even died on the spot. You are no exception. Today is the day of your death. Ji Tianxing temporarily ignored the sacred tree and pointed the burial of heaven sword at the king. He shouted coldly, "Then why are you still talking nonsense? Bring it on. Are you so eager to die?" The monarch raised his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth curled into a mocking sneer. I am a person who cherishes talent. Otherwise, I wouldn't have turned a deaf ear to your heinous crimes. You have outstanding talent and aptitude, and the divine kingdom is in need of talents. As long as you are willing to surrender and be loyal to me, then this monarch will consider giving you a way out. How about it? Haha. Do you think that's possible? Ji Tianxing sneered. The monarch frowned and said, although I was mentally prepared, I'm still very disappointed to hear your answer. Ji Tianxing still sneered and asked, aren't you going to abdicate and support the fifth prince? From what you've said, it seems that you're ambitious and want to do something big. The king asked him to pledge his loyalty and said that the god nation was in need of people. This made Ji Tianxing realize that things were not as simple as they seemed. As expected, the monarch pondered for a moment before saying in a deep voice, there's only you and me in the mystic realm, so there's no harm in me telling you the truth. This monarch has always been a man of great talent and bold vision with the world in mind. It's just that you're new here and don't know much about it. Moreover, this monarch is in his prime right now. It is the best time to expand my territory. The three princes are still too young and immature to take on great responsibilities. How can I be at ease to hand the god nation over to them? Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and said with a playful smile, now that the great Yan Empire is peaceful and there are no wars between the various god nations, how can you have the chance to expand your territory? Plus, Prince Lian has some conspiracy or motive to deliberately create conflicts between the god nations. If I'm not wrong, he must have promised you some benefits that moved your heart. Only by cooperating with him can you have the chance to succeed and expand your territory. However, Prince Lian also has a condition, which is for you to make the fifth prince the crown prince. You don't want to abdicate for the time being, so you agree to his condition, right? After listening to Ji Tianxing's speculation, the monarch frowned and narrowed his eyes, which flashed with a cold light. Brat, what method did you use to investigate this monarch's secret? Without a doubt, Ji Tianxing's speculation was right. The monarch thought that he was keeping it a secret and almost no one knew about it. However, Ji Tianxing said it with certainty as if he had seen it with his own eyes. He really couldn't understand how the news was leaked. What method did Ji Tianxing use to find out his secret? Seems like I guessed correctly. Ji Tianxing's smile became more playful as he explained, you don't have to worry, I didn't investigate this matter. After all, I have no foundation in the Bloodfire God Nation, so how can I investigate your secret? I just made a bold guess based on my wisdom and instinct. After pausing for a moment, he asked again, "Anyway, if I don't swear allegiance to you, I will be killed by you here. Why don't you be more magnanimous and tell me the truth and the answer? You and Prince Lian are working together in secret. I understand that you are doing this for your own benefit. However, Prince Lian and the fifth prince have a huge difference in status. How did you reach an agreement?" The monarch frowned and said coldly, "Although I like smart people, I really hate smart and unruly people like you." Ha ha. Ji Tianxing looked up and laughed. "You think I hate you because you don't have the confidence to subdue me. As a monarch, can't you be more domineering and magnanimous? Without the confidence and domineering of a monarch, how can you achieve great things? Tell me the answer and at least we can have a clear fight. How about it?" The monarch hesitated for a moment, then said, "Okay. I will be merciful this time and let you die with a clear understanding. The fifth prince's mother has a twin sister, known as Goddess Qi Ling. She is as beautiful as a fairy and has outstanding talent. She is a rare beauty that only appears once in 1,000 years. Goddess Qi Ling is the fifth prince's aunt. Many years ago she entered the He Tian sect and became the chief disciple. Prince Lian has also cultivated in the He Tian sect for many years. He and Goddess Qi Ling fell in love and became husband and wife. Now do you understand?" Ji Tianxing suddenly understood and quickly nodded. Between the two of them, it is not a transaction of interest but a bond of kinship. So that's how it is. Prince Lian supports the fifth prince because he cares about kinship and wants to cultivate his nephew. But on the other hand, he wants to push the fifth prince to the throne and inherit the throne of the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom. When the time comes, the fifth prince will be Prince Lian's puppet and the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom will be Prince Lian's henchman. Haha. The monarch's face was cold and he sneered, "Don't make it sound so bad. Although the fifth prince is useless, I am still on the throne. How can I let the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom become a puppet?" Ji Tianxing said with a playful smile, "That is hard to say. You and Prince Lian are in a cooperative relationship, but you are also competing with each other. It is not certain who will have the last laugh. At least for now, I am more optimistic about Prince Lian." The monarch's face darkened and his eyes flashed with a cold light. He shouted angrily, "Enough. My patience is limited. I have already revealed the top secret to you. Now you have to make the final choice. Will you resist or pledge your loyalty to me?" Mobile version update website. Chapter 3066. You want me to be loyal to you? You're not worthy. Ji Tianxing's reply was concise and powerful. The monarch's patience was completely exhausted, and his anger had reached its peak. His eyes spewed blood and fire as he roared, "Since that's the case, then die." As his voice fell, he waved his palms and executed an ultimate technique. He struck out in a mysterious trajectory and formed an incomparably marvelous palm print. Swish, 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 swish. The blood flames and divine power from all directions crazily gathered in front of him and condensed into a blood-colored ball of light the size of a mountain. Extreme shadow conquers the heavens. The monarch let out a furious roar and struck out with both palms at full force, aiming at Ji Tianxing from above. The mountain-sized blood-red ball of light whizzed down like a scorching sun. The ball of light was condensed and contained enough power to destroy the heavens and earth. After witnessing this ultimate technique, Ji Tianxing was even more certain that the monarch was also an 8th-level divine monarch. However, the monarch was at the peak of the 8th level and was only one step away from breaking through to the 9th level. Facing such an expert in the blood flame secret realm, the outcome of the battle was still unknown. Ji Tianxing could only go all out and use his Sword of Burial of Heaven to execute an ultimate technique of the Sword Dao. Sword of Daytime. He held the sword with both hands and seemed to stab out slowly, but he poured all of his power into the divine sword. Suddenly, a dazzling golden ball of light burst out from the divine sword and blasted toward the blood-colored ball of light. When the golden ball of light first appeared, it was only 1,000 feet in radius. It didn't fly far before it expanded to 1,000 feet in radius. When it collided with the blood-colored ball of light, it had expanded to a radius of 3,000 feet. The next moment, a blood-colored sun and a golden sun clashed fiercely in the sky. Boom! Crack! An earth-shattering sound burst out and spread throughout the entire blood flame secret realm, echoing for tens of thousands of miles. The two blazing suns collapsed at the same time, shattering into billions of divine light fragments that burst out in all directions. However, the golden fragments danced in the air and condensed into tens of thousands of sword lights, forming a sword array that was 2,000 miles in radius. As for the crimson divine light that filled the sky, it turned into tens of thousands of divine shadows that besieged Xianxia. Each of the godly spirit phantoms was 1,000 feet tall, but they all had different appearances. Some were sacred and dignified, some were evil, some had 3 heads and 6 arms, and some had a ferocious and terrifying appearance. Fortunately, Xianxia controlled the 10,000 swords formation in time and blocked the attacks of the god spirit's phantoms. Ping ping ping. The sword light collided with the god's shadow, causing it to shatter and explode. A series of muffled sounds could be heard. Xianxia and the monarch looked at each other with a hint of surprise on their faces. The two of them didn't expect that the other's ultimate skill also had a hidden move and variation. Generally speaking, the two of them had basically the same train of thought, and the nature of their ultimate skills were also very similar. The only difference was the way it was presented. The muffled sound lasted for a long time before the divine phantom and the sword array dissipated. The two of them were evenly matched and neither of them had the upper hand. The monarch made the first move and hurriedly absorbed the power of the blood flame sacred tree, forming 9 fire dragons that were thousands of feet long and pouring down on Xianxia. Dragon Blood Wrath. The 9 lifelike blood dragons all bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they attacked Xianxia in a ferocious manner. The power was astonishing. Xianxia didn't dodge. He activated the Heaven Mending Pearl to release a white light vortex in front of him. Swoosh. The 9 blood flame divine dragons rushed down and were all swallowed by the white light vortex, disappearing instantly. The monarch was immediately stunned and a deep shock flashed across his eyes. Bastard! What kind of ultimate skill is that? Can actually swallow my ultimate skill? The power of that ultimate skill just now was enough to destroy 100,000 miles of land. How could he swallow it so easily? Well, with his strength, it's impossible for him to swallow it so easily. He must have borrowed the power of the divine artifact. Taking advantage of the monarch's shock, Xianxia swung his sword again and used his ultimate skill. Milky Way Break. For countless years he had been cultivating the Milky Way body tempering art and tempering his body tens of millions of times before he had the domineering strength he had today. Milky Way Break was the ultimate skill that he had created after comprehending the divine Tao laws when he was cultivating in the Milky Way. The Burial of Heaven swung his sword and slashed out a sacred light sword that was hundreds of miles long. Furthermore, the sacred giant sword drew upon the power of the stars in outer space and became flashing with silver light. It was extremely sharp. The sword slashed down as if it was going to cut through the night sky and cut off the Milky Way. The monarch sensed the terrifying power of the sword light and his expression changed as he hurriedly retreated. While dodging, he didn't forget to use his ultimate skill to control the blood flame sacred tree and the 10 divine blood altars to help him block the sword light. However, one of the divine blood altars had already been destroyed by Xianxia. In the previous battle, 2 more divine blood altars had been destroyed, causing the power of the divine array to be greatly weakened. When the starry sword slashed in front of him, the monarch barely managed to form a blood-red barrier in front of him. Boom! Crack! Another thunderous boom erupted, shaking everything within a 15,000-mile radius and causing the entire secret realm to tremble. Amidst the loud boom, the seemingly solid blood-red barrier was split into pieces. The violent and unparalleled power sent the monarch flying. He drew an arc in the night sky, then fell 100 miles away in a sorry state. Plop! He smashed a 1,000-foot-deep crater into the cold and hard black stone ground, causing dirt and rocks to fly into the air. When the monarch flew out of the crater, he looked even more wretched. His golden robe was dyed with purple blood, and his messy hair covered his face. Blood also seeped out of the corner of his mouth. Clearly, the Milky Way break earlier had already injured him. Before the monarch could circulate his energy to suppress his injuries, Xianxia didn't show any mercy and charged over ferociously again. 5-colored divine lightning. He sent out a 5-colored pillar of lightning from his left palm. It was like a 1,000-foot-long blade of light that slashed toward the monarch. He waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand and used God slaying to stab at the monarch's head. Under the 2 attacks, the monarch was under great pressure and even sensed that he was about to die. His expression was solemn as he forced himself to endure his injuries. He hurriedly took out a square golden dragon seal and smashed it toward Ji Tianxing. That dazzling golden seal was the dragon seal of the monarch. It represented the highest authority in the Bloodfire divine nation and gathered the devout faith of billions of gods. This item was indeed extraordinary. It instantly became the size of a mountain and shattered the five-colored divine lightning. Boom! Crack! Amidst the earth-shattering explosion, the five-colored divine lightning shattered and sprinkled down billions of beams of five-colored divine light. The power of Dragon Seal was also weakened and the golden light dimmed. Then the god-slaying sword struck Dragon Seal with a loud boom. Long she was sent flying away, tumbling for 300 miles away. The monarch was sent flying again by the terrifying power. His face was even paler as he spat out a mouthful of blood. His injuries were even more severe, but he didn't feel any pain. All he felt was endless humiliation and shock. How can this kid's strength be so strong? Even I'm no match for him? He's grown so much in just a few months. I was too careless. I should have eliminated him long ago. How could I let him enter the royal city and the Bloodfire secret realm? At this moment the monarch really regretted it. Chapter 3067. The monarch was high and mighty, looking down on the 1 billion citizens of the divine nation. In the past, Ji Tianxing was just a useful talent that could be molded. He had never thought that Ji Tianxing could grow to such a level. Moreover, he had grown so quickly in such a short time. This was unprecedented. The monarch couldn't help but imagine that if he hadn't let Ji Tianxing enter the Blood Flame secret realm, things wouldn't have been so troublesome. Unfortunately, it was too late to regret now. He could only try to fix it. Whoosh! The monarch retreated as he sent out a golden light with his palm, sending out an order. Through the array of the Blood Flame secret realm, the order flew out of the secret realm and into the Soul Praying Palace. In a short while, the experts in the Soul Praying Palace all passed through the Blood Flame Gate and stepped into the Blood Flame secret realm. Whoosh! 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 A group of more than 60 people flew into the secret realm. They cut through the night sky and headed straight for the Blood Flame sacred tree in the middle. The leader was a withered old man whose entire body was shrunk in a black robe. He was the commander of the Dark Moon, the monarch's most loyal confidant, and the former commander of the palace guards. Following closely behind him were 8 commanders in purple robes with blood phoenixes embroidered on their collars. They were all middle-level divine lords. The 50 people behind them were the elite experts guarding the Soul Praying Palace. They were either captains of the Imperial Guards or hidden sentries. They were all low-level divine lords. In short, these 65 people were all divine lord experts and were absolutely loyal to the monarch. After entering the secret realm, the Dark Moon commander and the 8 purple-robed commanders knew that the monarch was going to deal with Ji Tianxing. In their eyes, Ji Tianxing wasn't worthy of being the monarch's opponent. Especially in the Blood Flame secret realm, the monarch could control the power of the secret realm. It was normal for him to kill Ji Tianxing instantly. Their mission was to protect the Blood Flame sacred tree from being affected by the battle. Therefore, after entering the secret realm, they headed straight for the sacred tree in the middle. However, when they flew through the night sky, they found that the secret realm was in a mess. Several divine blood altars in the outer ring had been destroyed by the shockwaves of the battle. Most of them had collapsed and countless cracks had appeared. The Blood Flame sacred tree in the center of the secret realm also became crooked. The ball of blood flame hanging in the night sky was also very dim and weak. Seeing this scene, the Dark Moon commander's gaze became even more gloomy, and he sped up to fly toward the sacred tree. The 8 commanders and many elite experts also sped up to catch up. Swish! Swish! Soon they arrived at the 3rd divine blood altar, which was only a few thousand miles away from the sacred tree. Only then did the crowd realize that the divine blood altar in the middle had collapsed. The towering sacred tree also fell to the ground, exposing billions of roots. Thousands of miles away in the night sky, Ji Tianxing was fighting fiercely with the monarch. Deafening noises could be heard continuously and divine light filled the sky. What made the crowd even more shocked was that the monarch was not Ji Tianxing's match. He was being suppressed by Ji Tianxing and could only retreat as he fought. He did not dare to face him head-on. Moreover, his dragon robe was tattered and his crown had long been shattered. His face was covered in blood. He looked very pathetic and miserable. Seeing this, the Dark Moon Commander was filled with murderous intent. He roared in a hoarse voice, "Protect the monarch! Quickly protect the monarch!" The 8 commanders and many elite experts panicked and rushed over without caring about anything else. They besieged Ji Tianxing and tried their best to save the monarch. Ji Tianxing was surrounded by many experts and had to give up chasing the monarch. He fought and retreated far away. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the Dark Moon Commander quickly rescued the monarch and retreated to the side. The 8 captains and 56 elite experts immediately formed an encirclement of 1,000 miles, encircling Ji Tianxing. The Dark Moon Commander supported the monarch and stood outside the encirclement. He did not have time to curse Ji Tianxing. He quickly checked the monarch's injuries and anxiously inquired about the situation. "Your Majesty, how can that traitor be so vicious to injure you like this? Your kindness to him is as heavy as the sea, and you secretly took care of him. He is so cruel and unscrupulous to fight against you. He is really vicious." The Dark Moon Commander was very smart. He did not ask why the monarch was beaten like this and why he could not defeat Ji Tianxing. He only mentioned that the monarch was indebted to Ji Tianxing, and Ji Tianxing repaid kindness with enmity. After hearing this, the monarch felt much better. After taking 2 divine pills and circulating his energy to suppress his injuries, he gasped and said, "I am fine. Old dog, you don't have to worry. That traitor is a poisonous snake. No matter how much I take care of him, he will bite his master in the end. Old dog, you came in time. I will leave this place to you. Capture him for me. You must capture him alive." The Dark Moon Commander quickly nodded and said with hatred, "That traitor committed such a heinous crime. Wouldn't it be too easy to kill him with a sword? We must capture him alive and put him in the bloody flame prison. He will be tortured for thousands of years as a warning to others." He did not dare to say that this was to vent the monarch's hatred, so as not to make the monarch seek revenge for the smallest grievance. As the closest confidant of the monarch, he understood this harsh and merciless monarch the best. He also avoided the important matters and dwell on the trivial matters. The monarch was very satisfied and nodded, "Yes. We will do as you say." At this time, Ji Tianxing stood in the night sky with his sword. He ignored the surrounding imperial guards and looked at the monarch with a sneer. "Ah! The facts have proven that you, the monarch, are nothing more than this. You were beaten so miserably by me that you can only call for help. I have already said that the bloody flame divine kingdom is too small to accommodate a big Buddha like me. Now do you believe me?" These words provoked the monarch. His face turned green and white and he was quite ashamed and resentful. The Dark Moon Commander quickly scolded with murderous intent. "Evil creature, don't be so arrogant. His Majesty loves his people like his children. When he attacked you, he was kind and left you some leeway. He hoped that you would realize your mistake and mend your ways. Who would have thought that you would be so cruel and vicious? You don't understand His Majesty's good intentions, and you are still complacent here. However, I will not be soft-hearted to you. I will let you know how powerful I am." After that, the Dark Moon Commander ordered and shouted, "The monarch has ordered that we keep him alive and capture him alive." The 8 commanders and 56 elites said in unison, "Yes, sir." Then they waved their swords and Kenshin soldiers, and used their ultimate skills to besiege Ji Tianxing. Swoosh, swoosh, boom, boom. Hundreds of divine path secret skills, divine light illusions that covered the sky, and tens of thousands of sword shadows and swords suddenly covered a radius of a few thousand miles. Endless swords and swords poured down from the night sky like a torrent and were about to drown Ji Tianxing. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing no longer held back and used his ultimate skill decisively. Heaven Punishment Sword Formation. He waved the Burial of Heaven sword with all his strength and slashed out huge golden swords that filled the sky, forming a sword formation. This time, the Heaven Punishment Sword Formation that he used was more than 10 times stronger than before. The divine power consumed was also immeasurable. He did not have enough divine power, so he had to draw on the divine power stored in the Heaven Mending Pearl. Chapter 3068. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of giant divine swords were formed. The giant swords danced in the sky and blocked the super skills of the experts. Rumble. A series of thunderous explosions reverberated in the night sky. Within 3 breaths, the super skills of the dozens of Surgod experts were blocked by the tens of thousands of sword radiances. Then, the tens of thousands of giant swords intertwined and formed the Sky Punishment Sword Array. Swoosh. A golden sword formation with a circumference of 8,000 miles stood on the pitch-black and icy ground. Not only were more than 60 Surgod experts covered, but the commander of the Dark Moon and the monarch were also sealed in the sword array. Seeing this scene, the Dark Moon Great Commander's face was full of contempt and he grinned coldly. "Ha! You are facing more than 60 Surgod experts alone. You are lucky that you are not killed instantly. You are not thinking about how to escape or kneel down and surrender. You are still using the sword array to resist till the end? You must be crazy." Not only was the commander of the Dark Moon full of contempt, but the dozens of experts also mocked and sneered. "You are alone and you dare to fight with so many experts? You are overestimating yourself. Each of us can cut you into pieces with one sword. Shameless thief, don't waste time. Kneel down and surrender." In everyone's eyes, Ji Tianxing was dreaming if he wanted to fight more than 60 Surgod experts with a sword array. Only the monarch had a serious expression on his face as he stared at Ji Tianxing with a gloomy expression. His eyes were filled with caution. He had fought with Ji Tianxing before and knew Ji Tianxing's real strength. Although he was not sure if Ji Tianxing could create another miracle, he was very uneasy. However, he felt very uneasy and had an ominous premonition. At this moment, Ji Tianxing glanced at the crowd indifferently and sneered, "A bunch of frogs in the well. Now I will show you what a supreme Kenshin is." As he spoke, he waved his left hand and activated the Sky Punishment Sword Array. Instantly, the 10,000 divine swords danced in the air, releasing an unparalleled divine might that could suppress the heavens and the earth. An invincible sword will that could annihilate everything also descended in an invisible manner, covering a radius of 8,000 miles. In that short moment, the heaven-destroying sword formation went all out and its power reached its peak. Puff, puff, puff. In the next instant, the expressions of more than 50 low-level divine lords changed drastically, blood spurting out of their noses and mouths. The supreme divine might and sword intent pressed down, shattering their internal organs and rupturing their meridians and blood vessels. None of them could stay in the sky, falling down like dumplings and smashing on the ground. In the blink of an eye, the number of powerhouses in the sky decreased by 70%. Ji Tianxing had not made a move yet. Just using the power of the sword formation, he severely injured over 30 lower divine lords. The remaining dozen or so lesser divine lords were still able to remain in the sky. However, his face was as pale as a sheet of paper. His body was bent like a shrimp, and his expression was one of extreme pain. Under such circumstances, even if they could still fight, how much of their strength could they use? Seeing this scene, the expressions of the Dark Moon Great Commander and the 8 commanders changed drastically. Their eyes were filled with dense shock. How is this possible? What kind of sword formation has such terrifying power? He did not even use a single sword, but he injured over 30 elite Imperial guards. No wonder His Majesty wants to get rid of him. This lad is so powerful, but he is an enemy of the kingdom of gods. He will definitely bring disaster to the world. No matter what, we have to kill him. We cannot let him leave the mystic realm alive. Otherwise, it will be a disaster for Monarch City. While everyone was exclaiming, they also made up their minds. No matter what price they had to pay, they had to get rid of Ji Tianxing. Otherwise, he would definitely start a shocking massacre in Monarch City. At the same time, the power of the 10,000 divine swords reached its peak and started to kill many divine lord powerhouses. Swish, swish, swish. The chaotic swords tore through the air and flew back and forth, forming countless golden hurricanes. Those heavily injured Imperial guards who had fallen to the ground would be smashed into pieces once they were swept up by the blade hurricanes. Loud noises could be heard continuously from the sword formation. Screams and wails could be heard everywhere. It didn't take long for more than 30 heavily injured Imperial Army elites to be reduced to smithereens. Even if they were wearing monarch-level armor and had the protection of divine weapons, it was useless. The other dozen or so Imperial guards were also killed by the blade hurricanes. They were wailing in despair as they struggled to hold on. The armor and all kinds of defensive divine weapons they were wearing were extremely fragile under the attack of the sword radiance. Soon they were turned into scrap metal and debris. Immediately after, their divine bodies were also shattered and blood rained down from the sky. Only the 8 commanders, the Dark Moon Commander, and the king could still withstand the attack of the Sword Radiance. However, they did not care about attacking Ji Tianxing. They surrounded the king and risked their lives to protect the king. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing held the Sword of Burial of Heaven and charged toward the crowd with an imposing aura. Sky-breaking sword. 7 stars sword. Broken moon. Sun-shattering. Dragon elephant divine fist. Sky-breaking finger. Ji Tianxing flashed back and forth in the sword formation. He attacked from the east and the west, left and right. All sorts of sword Dao ultimate skills, divine abilities and secret techniques were at his fingertips, and he executed them smoothly and skillfully. The 8 commanders were exhausted from defending and were soon injured one after another. They were passively defending and were completely led by Ji Tianxing. They had already lost their composure and rhythm. Ji Tianxing attacked for 100 breaths of time and 4 commanders were heavily injured. Their injuries were very miserable. Seeing this, the king finally could not bear it anymore. He flew into a rage and said, "Idiots. A bunch of idiots. What did they look like when they were in such a mess? I don't need your protection. You just need to kill him at all costs." The Dark Moon and the 8 commanders were somewhat hesitant. They wanted to persuade the king to prioritize his own safety. However, the king was stubborn and gave a death order. Therefore, the Dark Moon personally led the 8 commanders to attack Ji Tianxing. They were filled with grief and indignation. They finally found an outlet to vent their anger, so they attacked crazily without regard for anything else. Even if they were heavily injured, they wanted to bite off a piece of Ji Tianxing's flesh. The 8 commanders were still manageable. They were only middle-level godly lords. However, the Dark Moon was an 8th-stage godly lord. His strength was second only to the king. He was like a bloodthirsty jackal, attacking Ji Tianxing crazily and unleashing 120% of his combat strength. This created a huge obstruction for Ji Tianxing. If not for the heaven-vanquishing sword formation being strong enough to suppress so many commanders, he would have been beaten to a pulp. Fortunately, he was calm and collected and looked for an opportunity to counterattack. In a short while, he found an opportunity to kill 3 heavily injured commanders. Instantly, the pressure on him decreased greatly. At this time, the king had already retreated to the edge of the sword formation. With a solemn expression, he took out a blood-red horsetail whisk and used a secret technique to activate his lifetime's divine power. He held the horsetail whisk and waved it slowly, using an ancient and mysterious secret technique. Suddenly, the entire blood flame secret realm shook, brewing a power that could destroy heaven and earth. The blood-red horsetail whisk was refined by the first king 10,000 years ago from the first branch of the sacred tree. This was the second national treasure of the blood flame divine kingdom, called the Blood Sea Pagoda. Chapter 3069. Most of the citizens only knew about the Bloody Flame Sacred Tree and not the Blood Sea Pagoda. After all, this item was created way too early. Its power was shocking and almost reached the limit of a monarch-grade artifact. However, the Bloody Flame Kingdom had been peaceful for the past 10,000 years. There were no major wars or crises. As a result, the Blood Sea Pagoda was covered in dust and rarely used. Even many members of the royal family had only heard of this artifact but had never seen it with their own eyes. Now Ji Tianxing had caused a ruckus in the secret land. The Bloody Flame Sacred Tree had been overturned and was about to be taken away by him. The foundation of the Bloody Flame Kingdom had been shaken and was on the verge of collapse. The monarch naturally had to use the Blood Sea Pagoda to end the situation. Taking advantage of the fact that Ji Tianxing was besieged by the Dark Moon and a few commanders, the monarch activated the Blood Sea Pagoda and used its ultimate skill. Swoosh, swoosh. The 5-foot-long blood-red tree branch emitted a blood-red light that covered the sky and earth. Suddenly, blood waves rolled in between the heavens and the earth. In just 3 breaths, the blood waves reached a height of 10,000 feet and covered a radius of 8,000 miles, filling the entire divine array. The raging waves carried the power to burn mountains and boil seas. They were unstoppable as they blasted toward Ji Tianxing. Of course, the Dark Moon and a few commanders were also within the range of the blood waves. They were all heavily injured. Their bodies were dripping with blood and their flesh was badly mangled. After fighting with Ji Tianxing for so long, his eyes had long since turned bloodshot, and he had gone crazy from the bloodthirst. They would rather die in battle than take a step back. They could not let Ji Tianxing leave the secret land. Therefore, when they saw the monstrous waves of blood, they did not feel fear or dread. They had no intention of retreating. Instead, they attacked Ji Tianxing even more ferociously. Even if they had to die, they had to hold him back and not let him escape the blood waves. Damned beast, there's nowhere for you to run now. Your time is up. You can't bring disaster to the Bloody Flame Kingdom anymore. The divine array of the Bloody Flame Kingdom has been activated. Why aren't you dead yet? Ji Tianxing fended off the frenzied attacks of the crowd while looking at the monarch who was at the edge of the formation a few thousand miles away. When he saw the monarch holding a crystal-clear blood-red branch that was crazily sprinkling blood light, his gaze immediately locked onto the branch. Such a powerful divine weapon? Its aura is exactly the same as that of the blood flame sacred tree. It's most likely made from the branches of the sacred tree. Ji Tianxing could feel the power of the blood sea pagoda, and his expression turned grave. He instantly analyzed the result. With his own strength, it would be very difficult for him to resist the power of the blood sea pagoda. Even if he could block it, he would still be injured. The monarch and the Dark Moon Commander would be able to find an opportunity to deal with him. Thus, he decisively took out the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda to block the monstrous waves of blood. Shwa! A black light flashed. A mysterious ancient pagoda that was 10,000 feet tall appeared out of thin air, towering in the sky. Ji Tianxing's figure had already disappeared. He had already entered the divine pagoda. An overwhelming wave of blood instantly engulfed the mysterious black tower. Bam! A deafening sound exploded, reverberating throughout the heaven-destroying sword formation. However, there was a thick layer of black light on the surface of the divine pagoda, firmly blocking the impact of the monstrous waves of blood. The divine pagoda was undamaged, standing motionlessly in the sea of blood. Ji Tianxing was also unharmed. He stayed in the origin divine formation on the 5th level of the divine pagoda, calmly meditating to recover the divine power he had expended. As for the Dark Moon Commanders, they were not as lucky as him. They were instantly killed. Bam, 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 bam. With a series of explosions, the purple-robed commanders exploded on the spot, their divine bodies smashed into pieces. Only their divine cores managed to escape, but they were also heavily injured. They floated up and down in the sea of blood, dizzy and confused. The Dark Moon Commander was even more powerful, so he was already prepared for the impact of the Blood Sea Pagoda. When the monstrous waves of blood came crashing down, he used all his strength to block them and managed to escape death. His divine body was protected, but it was also covered in cracks and blood spurted out. His loose black robe was already in tatters, unable to cover his hunched and withered body. Cough, cough. He was like a blurry mass of flesh and blood floating in the sea of blood, coughing violently and gasping for breath. Even if that little bastard doesn't die from the impact of the Blood Sea Pagoda, he should be heavily injured, right? This thought flashed through the Dark Moon Commander's mind as his mind cleared up a little. He turned his head and looked around, searching for Ji Tianxing's figure in the sea of blood. However, he did not find Ji Tianxing. Instead, he saw the divine pagoda not far away. His body trembled and his expression froze, revealing an extremely sorrowful and indignant expression. Damn it! Why is it like this? He still has a trump card up his sleeve after fighting for so long? He actually used this black pagoda to block the impact of the blood waves. The Dark Moon Commander could not accept this result and roared angrily. The monarch's expression was also ugly, and his eyes were as cold as ice. He also did not expect the battle to be in full swing, to the point of being at the end of the line. In the end, Ji Tianxing still had a trump card up his sleeve and blocked the Blood Sea Pagoda's attack at the crucial moment. This made him very frustrated and his mood was extremely irritable. Damned beast, do you think a broken pagoda can block this monarch's divine weapon? Wishful thinking. Let's see where you can hide after I break your tortoise shell. The monarch cursed angrily and waved the Blood Sea Pagoda with all his might, creating waves of blood waves that crazily bombarded the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Pagoda. Bam, bam, bam. The shocking waves of blood kept attacking the divine pagoda, creating a series of loud, dull sounds that reverberated in the Heaven Punishment Sword formation. However, the divine pagoda did not move at all. It was still as tall and straight as a mountain. No matter how strong the waves of blood were, they could not shake the black light on the surface of the divine pagoda. As for the divine pagoda and Zhi Tianxing, they were not damaged at all. No matter how crazy the monarch was, it was futile. Zhi Tianxing and the divine pagoda were fine, but the Dark Moon Commander and the other commanders were in trouble. The Heaven Punishment Sword Formation was still in operation, and the endless sea of blood was sealed within 8,000 miles, filling every corner of the world. Therefore they could not leave this area and could only wander in the sea of blood. The monarch was so angry that he kept on waving the waves of blood and completely ignored them. In less than 10 breaths, the divinities of the commanders were shattered and turned into a pile of fragments that scattered in the sea of blood. These commanders never thought that they would die in the hands of the monarch, even though they were loyal and devoted to him. How could this be justified? The Dark Moon Commander's divine body was already severely injured and was covered in wounds. He had been holding on, waiting for the Heaven Punishment Sword Formation to collapse so that he could escape the sea of blood. Unexpectedly, before the sword formation collapsed, he was smashed into pieces by the power of the Blood Sea Pagoda. His physical body was destroyed on the spot, leaving only a divinity that desperately escaped in the sea of blood. Soon the divinity was hit by the waves of blood a few times and became covered in wounds and cracks. Moreover, the impact of the waves of blood was so great that he could not control his direction at all. He wanted to escape to the monarch's side, but the waves of blood pushed him near the divine pagoda. Seeing that the divinity was about to be destroyed after a few more waves, the Dark Moon Commander was scared out of his wits. He shouted desperately, "Your Majesty! Your Majesty, please spare my life." He brandished the Blood Sea Pagoda at all costs, urging the boundless waves of blood to bombard the divine pagoda. Bang! Bang bang! Another loud explosion erupted, shaking the heavens and the earth. The divine pagoda was as stable as Mount Tai. On the other hand, the heaven-destroying sword formation continued to bear the brunt of the boundless blood waves, and its power continued to dissipate. Finally, after 100 breaths of time, the heaven-destroying sword formation could not be replenished with divine power and collapsed on the spot. Wow! Hua hua! The golden light sword formation with a circumference of 8,000 miles was torn to shreds and fell apart. Tens of thousands of giant swords shattered in the sea of blood. The divine power and sword essence that suppressed the heavens and the earth also quickly dissipated. The boundless sea of blood had lost its restraints and nothing could imprison it. It immediately expanded in all directions. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the sea of blood expanded from 8,000 miles to 20,000 miles. After a few more breaths, the sea of blood expanded to more than 30,000 miles, filling the entire blood flame secret realm. Tens of thousands of miles of wasteland, the 7 broken pieces of the divine blood altar, and the crooked blood flame sacred tree were all submerged by the boundless sea of blood. However, the blood flame sacred tree and the blood sea pagoda were of the same origin and would not be destroyed by the waves of blood. Instead, the two resonated and their powers complemented each other, making the blood sea pagoda even more powerful. This caused the boundless sea of blood that filled the blood flame secret realm to become even more violent and destructive. The monarch stood at the top of the sea of blood and constantly waved his crystal-clear blood jade-like tree branches, urging the boundless sea of blood to continuously attack the divine tower. He had made up his mind to crush the divine tower so that Zhi Tianxing would have nowhere to hide and turn into a skeleton in the sea of blood. Boom! Boom boom boom! One after another, earth-shattering noises exploded in the secret realm. Unfortunately, no matter how violent the boundless sea of blood was, it could not shake the divine tower. The monarch's expression became uglier and uglier. Gradually, doubt and anxiety appeared in his gloomy eyes. "I don't believe that there is a divine artifact that can block the attacks of the sacred tree and the blood sea pagoda." In his opinion, the sacred tree was a quasi-king level divine artifact and the blood sea pagoda was a supreme grade divine artifact. Under the divine king realm, these two treasures could be said to be invincible and indestructible. No matter how powerful Zhi Tianxing was, he was only a wandering genius. Without the support of a superpower, it was impossible for him to have a king-level divine artifact. Therefore, the divine tower must be destroyed. However, as time passed, the monarch continued to attack for an hour and still could not break the defense of the divine tower, let alone destroy it. He muttered in his heart and became more and more doubtful and unconfident. What kind of treasure is that black tower? How can it block the attacks of the Blood Sea Pagoda and the sacred tree? It has been an hour and I have consumed 40% of my divine power. Why is there still no effect? How can this be? The power of the Blood Sea Pagoda has not weakened. Could it be that the Black Tower is also a supreme-grade divine artifact? It should be impossible, right? I don't feel that the divine tower is releasing the aura of a supreme-grade divine artifact. The monarch became more and more irritable and unconfident. The divine tower was safe and sound, but the blood flame secret realm could not bear the burden. After being attacked by the boundless sea of blood for an hour, the space barrier of the blood flame secret realm began to loosen and collapse. Many cracks appeared. For example, there was a pitch-black space crack in the southeast corner of the secret realm that formed a hole. The surging waves of blood and divine fire frantically poured into the crack and leaked into the pitch-black void. Similar space cracks and holes appeared in several places in the secret realm. As for the fine cracks that could not be seen, they were still increasing. However, the monarch only wanted to destroy the divine tower and kill Zhi Tianxing, so he did not notice this detail. At the same time, Zhi Tianxing had been meditating in the distorted space of the divine tower for 2 days and had recovered 90% of his strength. He returned to the 5th floor and stood in the origin divine formation. He extended his divine sense to observe the situation of the blood flame secret realm. He discovered that the space of the secret realm was unstable and that cracks and holes had appeared. He immediately revealed a playful smile. "Ha! That tree branch is so powerful. Don't blame me for borrowing your strength and playing something exciting with you." As he spoke, he formed hand seals with both hands and sent countless divine lights into the origin divine formation. Soon he activated the origin divine formation and activated the power of the 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda. The divine tower emitted boundless golden light and released a destructive golden torrent that spread in all directions and fiercely attacked the boundless sea of blood. Chapter 3071. Ha! Little B** starred, you finally can't help but fight back? If you can't hold it in anymore, it means that my chance is here. Seeing the golden light released by the divine pagoda, the king was immediately energized. As he laughed, he waved the Blood Sea Pagoda with all his might and attacked the divine pagoda. Previously, Zhi Tianxing had been hiding in the divine pagoda. Other than attacking the Dark Moon Commander, he hadn't done anything for an hour. This made the monarch feel uncertain. He couldn't figure out the details of the divine pagoda and couldn't see through Zhi Tianxing's real situation. But it was different now. Zhi Tianxing fought back, which meant that he felt the danger and had to struggle. The king's confidence doubled and he attacked with all his might without holding back. Boom! Boom! The golden light released by the divine pagoda collided with the boundless blood waves, creating a loud noise that shook the 9 heavens. In just a few seconds, the two forces crazily clashed more than 3,000 times. Jutian Tenju Pagoda was a king-level divine artifact with unparalleled power. But it wasn't Zhi Tianxing's life divine artifact, so it couldn't unleash its true power. He could only use less than 20% of its power to fight the Blood Sea Pagoda to a draw, and he was on par with the king. The boundless Blood Sea was still turbulent, and the divine pagoda didn't move. No one gained an advantage, so of course there was no loss. However, this made the king even more convinced that Zhi Tianxing was at his wits' end. As long as Zhi Tianxing couldn't defeat him, he could use the sacred tree and the Blood Sea Pagoda to kill Zhi Tianxing here. However, just as he was filled with complacency and anticipation, he heard a cracking sound. The crisp cracking sound suddenly came, and the king's body stiffened and he woke up on the spot. He turned his head subconsciously and saw a scene that he would never forget for the rest of his life. He saw that the edge of the blood flame secret realm had a few cracks that were thousands of feet long. Boundless blood waves and divine flames crazily poured into the cracks and surged into the dark void. 1, 2, 3. A total of 8 cracks were distributed around the secret realm. Moreover, those gaps were still expanding and spreading rapidly. The Blood Sea's power was quickly draining away, and the blood flame secret realm was shaking violently as if a super earthquake had occurred. A loud rumbling sound came from under their feet, and the pitch-black wasteland began to collapse. The monarch was dumbfounded. He widened his eyes in shock and exclaimed, the arcane realm is about to collapse? The blood flame secret realm was built by the first monarch with great effort. In the eyes of the monarch, this mystic realm that had been passed down for 10,000 years was indestructible, like a small world. He had never thought that there would be a day when the secret realm would shatter. The impact was too great, causing him to be unable to regain his senses for a moment, and he was stunned on the spot as he muttered to himself. How could this be? The mystic realm was an alternate dimension, so how could it collapse? No matter how powerful the Blood Sea Pagoda was, it couldn't possibly destroy the entire secret realm. It's over. If the mystic realm that has been passed down for 10,000 years is destroyed, then I will be the sinner of Scandinavia. The monarch was shocked and furious. He no longer cared about attacking Zhou Xian. He hurriedly used the law of space in an attempt to repair the gap in the secret realm. However, there were too many gaps in the mystic realm. In all directions above his head, below his feet, there were gaps and cracks everywhere, and they were all expanding and spreading rapidly. No matter how strong the monarch was, it was impossible for him to repair those gaps quickly. Moreover, Zhou Xian was still controlling the divine pagoda to release an even more violent golden light, bombarding the edge of the mystic realm. Boom boom boom. In the blink of an eye, there were a few more holes in the mystic realm. The monarch was in complete despair. In a fit of anger, he raised his head and spat out a mouthful of blood, causing his long hair to fall over his face. Ah, you despicable bastard, I will not live under the same sky as you. The monarch roared into the sky, his voice filled with grief and anger, and it was filled with shocking killing intent. His eyes turned dark red with blood and his body burst out with bloody flames. He went berserk. Kill. I will kill you. He rushed towards the divine pagoda, holding the Blood Sea Pagoda with both hands. He used it as a sword and slashed at the divine pagoda. Bam bam bam. The bloody blades slashed at the divine pagoda, causing a series of muffled sounds. However, the bloody blades collapsed one after another, while the divine pagoda remained unscathed. Zhou Xian controlled the divine pagoda to release a few torrents of golden light, which bombarded the monarch. The monarch was sent flying thousands of miles away, blood spurting out of his nose and mouth. At this time, the entire mystic realm was already half damaged and it was on the verge of collapse. The mystic realm was about to be destroyed, and the formation imprisoning the blood flame sacred tree had already fallen apart. At this time, the blood flame sacred tree was also tilted in the sea of blood, like a rootless duckweed. As the mystic realm shook violently, the sea of blood surged and the sacred tree also swayed unsteadily. Zhou Xian hurriedly controlled the divine pagoda to fly near the sacred tree. He then activated the heaven-mending orb, which released endless white light, forming a vortex with a radius of 10,000 feet. Whoosh! The dazzling white vortex slowly enveloped the blood flame sacred tree, erupting with a power that could devour everything. The blood flame sacred tree had no intelligence, so of course, it would not struggle or escape. Soon it was swallowed by the white vortex and entered the heaven-mending orb bit by bit. Thousands of miles away, the monarch had just stabilized his body and was circulating his energy to suppress his injuries. Before he could take a divine pill, he saw the blood flame sacred tree being enveloped by the white vortex and disappearing bit by bit. Seeing this, the monarch was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets, and he rushed over angrily. Bastard! Don't you dare! Even if I have to die with you, I won't let you go. The blood flame mystic realm was about to collapse, and if the sacred tree was snatched away by Zhou Xian, the blood flame kingdom would be finished. If they lost these two national treasures, the blood flame kingdom would lose face and their prestige would plummet. Secondly, without these two treasures to nurture talents for the blood flame kingdom, the kingdom's strength would soon weaken. Of course, as the monarch, he would also have to bear the infamy of being muddle-headed and incompetent. Thinking of these consequences, the monarch stopped Zhou Xian at all costs. Even if he died here, it was better than being spurned by billions of people. However, Zhou Xian focused on controlling the heaven-mending orb to speed up the absorption of the sacred tree. The divine pagoda stood between him and the monarch, releasing a destructive golden torrent that swept toward the monarch. Of course, the divine pagoda would not automatically attack. The one controlling the divine pagoda was the owner of the divine pagoda, Jiku. Just now Ji Tianxing woke her up and asked her for help. Although she had just broken through to the divine sovereign realm, her strength could not be compared to the monarch's. However, she could control the divine pagoda and use 20% of its power, which was enough to stop the monarch. Bang! 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 Several streaks of golden light hit the monarch and sent him flying again. After a few breaths of time, when he adjusted his state and attacked again, the entire blood flame sacred tree had disappeared. Ji Tianxing stored the blood flame sacred tree in the heaven-mending orb and temporarily placed it in the five elements world. At the same time, the blood flame mystic realm finally collapsed and completely collapsed. Mobile version update website. Chapter 3072. Rumble. A thunderous sound spread out in the pitch-black void. The blood flame secret realm, which was tens of thousands of miles wide, turned into debris and completely collapsed. Endless waves of blood and divine flames surged into the pitch-black void and quickly disappeared. When the earth-shattering sound dissipated, only the dark void was left. The secret realm, the sacred tree, everything was gone. The monarch, who was covered in blood and in a sorry state, stood in the void and looked down at all this. Why did this happen? How could a lowly non-humankind boy, a nobody, bring such a disaster to the divine nation? What did I do wrong? Haotian, why did you punish me like this? The monarch roared crazily and scolded Haotian. He couldn't accept this result and couldn't understand it. What did he do wrong? How did he end up in such a miserable state? Soon he calmed down from his rage. He slowly turned his head to look at Ji Tianxing, who was standing in the void hundreds of miles away, and asked in a low and cold voice, Tianxing, what enmity do I have with you? Ji Tianxing held the divine pagoda in his left hand and the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand. He shook his head calmly. Before today we didn't have any grudges. That was the truth. He had a deep hatred for the fifth prince and offended the second prince, but he didn't have any direct conflict with the monarch. Of course, from now on the two of them were irreconcilable enemies. The monarch nodded slightly and glared at him with hatred. He asked in a hoarse voice, if you didn't have any grudges, why did you destroy my secret realm, steal my sacred tree and destroy the foundation of my god nation? Tell me, who do you work for? Which force or god nation made you harm your own people like this? Ji Tianxing shook his head again and said calmly, I only work for myself. I don't work for any country or force. I only wanted to steal the blood flame sacred tree. I didn't want to destroy the secret realm. In fact, you were the one who caused the secret realm to collapse. Bullshit. The king cursed furiously, his face ferocious as he cursed, you despicable, shameless, heinous traitor. To think that this monarch had paid attention to you and wanted to put you in an important position. Now that I think about it, this lord was really blind. Back then this monarch was benevolent and didn't give the order to kill you. I really regret it for the rest of my life. Ji Tianxing nodded and said calmly, there is no right or wrong between the strong. The blood flame sacred tree is useful to me, so I tried to steal it. It's only natural that you hate me. However, this treasure is mine and I will not return it. As compensation, I won't kill you, and I promise that I won't hurt the innocent citizens of Royal City. I can even keep this secret and help you preserve the reputation of the royal family and the kingdom of God. Hearing this, the monarch immediately grinned coldly. What a joke. How ironic. You destroyed the mystic realm and snatched my sacred tree, but now you want to spare my life as if you're doing me a favor? You want to let me go, but I don't want to let you go. The monarch clenched the blood sea stupor again, and a murderous aura burst out from his body. He was about to attack again. Ji Tianxing glanced at him and said with a smile, I've already gotten what I want, so there's no point in arguing with you anymore. Goodbye. As his voice fell, he used the law of space and left the void. Swoosh. In the next instant, his figure drilled out from the ground of the royal palace and appeared directly above the royal palace out of thin air. It was already early in the morning and the sun was rising from the east. The golden morning sun illuminated the many palaces in golden splendor, making them look especially sacred and solemn. Many imperial guards were patrolling and the civil and military officials were going to the imperial court to discuss matters. Outside the Soul Prayer Hall, Zhenhong, Shangqi and the others were still standing in the square, quietly waiting for the result. What happened in the mystic realm made them feel uneasy. Tianxing wanted to steal the sacred tree, and the monarch personally came to stop him. This was definitely a big deal. However, they did not dare to leave the Soul Prayer Hall without permission, nor did they dare to spread this news. This matter involved the monarch and was of great importance. It had to be a top secret. If they dared to leak this secret, wouldn't they be blaspheming the Holy Kingdom and betraying the monarch? Xianxia, Qin Yun, and the others were filled with righteous indignation. They could not wait to join forces to kill Ji Tianxing. Zhen Hong was filled with worry and his heart was in turmoil. She wanted to inform the third prince so that the third prince could plead with the monarch. However, Xianxia and the others were staring at her, so she had no chance to do so. She could only pray silently in her heart, hoping that Mr. Tianxing would not make a big mistake. She hoped that the monarch would be lenient on the account that he was the top genius. Just as she was praying, Xianxia, Qin Yun, and the others suddenly exclaimed, "There's someone there. That person just popped up, right? Why does he look so familiar? This is the royal palace and that guy is actually standing in the sky? This is disrespectful. Hey, look, isn't that Tianxing?" Hearing their exclamations, Zhen Hong quickly turned her head and looked at the sky in the east. She saw a young top power in a white robe standing high in the sky. White robe, black hair, a mysterious black sword in his hand, and an extraordinary aura. Who else could it be but Ji Tianxing? He looked around and then flew out of the royal palace ready to leave. At that moment, the imperial guards who were guarding the royal palace noticed him. Immediately, someone blew the horn and a few imperial guards flew up into the sky and surrounded him with swords and sabers. He did not kill the imperial guards. Instead, he teleported away and wanted to leave the royal palace. However, the defensive array of the royal palace had already been activated. Swoosh! The super array of the 9 layers of divine array formed a rainbow sky screen, covering a radius of 50 miles and covering the entire royal palace. That was a superior divine array of the royal level and its defense was the strongest. No matter how powerful Ji Tianxing was, he could not force his way through the divine array. He was trapped in the array and could not leave the royal palace for the time being. Xianxia, Qin Yun and the rest immediately revealed gloating and gratified expressions. He has committed a grave crime and he still wants to escape? The royal palace is the most heavily guarded place in the holy nation. How can he leave as he pleases? Let's go over and see what happens to him. Yes. His Majesty is prepared and will not let him escape. Let's see how His Majesty will deal with him. As they spoke, Xianxia, Qin Yun and the rest flew up into the sky and headed for Ji Tianxing. Masanori's expression was somewhat ugly, and her eyes were filled with worry and anxiety. Seeing that Xianxia and the rest had left, she quickly took out her communication jade slip and explained the situation to the third prince and asked for help. After sending the message, she quickly caught up with Qin Yun and the rest and flew toward Ji Tianxing. At that moment, there was a roar from the ground of the royal palace and a blood-red figure flew out. Swoosh! Blood light flashed and the monarch, who was covered in blood and had disheveled hair, appeared in the sky. He held the holy sword in his left hand and the blood sea pagoda in his right hand. He stared at Ji Tianxing and his body was burning with the blood flame of massacre. He laughed ferociously and said, "Ha! Thief! You still want to escape? I have already set up an inescapable net and am waiting for you to be caught. Now that you are surrounded by enemies, what are you waiting for? Kneel down and accept your death." Chapter 3073. His voice was as loud as thunder and it spread throughout the palace. The monarch stood proudly in the sky. His aura was strong and domineering as if he had everything under his control. After all, this was the palace, his home ground. The entire palace was covered by the defense array, forming an inescapable net. Ji Tianxing could not escape even if he had wings. More than 1,000 imperial guards had gathered in the sky. Thousands of imperial guards were rushing over from all directions, forming an encirclement. In addition, more than 20 imperial guards were rushing over with murderous intent. Everyone's goal was to kill Ji Tianxing. Looking around, he was surrounded by enemies. However, Ji Tianxing had expected this outcome. He did not panic and looked around coldly. Soon, the leader of the eunuchs rushed to the monarch's side with a few junior eunuchs. After a while, they helped the monarch change into a dragon robe, combed his hair and put on the crown. The monarch temporarily suppressed his injuries and became energetic and domineering again. This caused the several thousand imperial army soldiers and many experts of the royal court to feel excited, their blood boiling. In everyone's eyes, Ji Tianxing was doomed. There was no way he could survive. Shang-Chi, Qin Yun and the others stood aside and whispered to each other. They admired the monarch's domineering aura and looked at Ji Tianxing gloatingly. They were waiting to watch a good show. Zhenhong was anxious. He looked at Ji Tianxing worriedly and turned his head to look outside the palace from time to time. Finally, when she saw the appearance of the third prince, her hanging heart finally settled down. When the third prince received the news, he hurried into the palace with 3 commanders of the imperial army. After passing through the defense array of the palace, he rushed over anxiously. Zhenhong quickly went up and bowed to the third prince. The third prince waved his hand and interrupted her. He asked anxiously, "Zhenhong, what happened? What happened to Master Tianxing?" Zhenhong hurriedly explained, "Third prince, young Master Tianxing received the baptism of the sacred tree in the blood flame secret realm and broke through 2 realms in 2 days. For some reason he actually wanted to move the blood flame sacred tree away. The monarch seemed to have long been on guard against him. He entered the secret realm in time to stop him and drove us out." "What?" Suddenly hearing this news, the third prince's body stiffened, and his eyes widened, revealing a look of deep shock. After a short moment he came back to his senses and cried out involuntarily, This, isn't this too daring? This prince already knew that Tianxing was arrogant and domineering, but how could he? This is trying to poke a hole in the sky. How could the monarch forgive him for such a heinous crime?" Seeing that the third prince was also anxious, Zhenhong was so anxious that his eyes turned red. He hurriedly pleaded, "Your Highness, there must be a reason for Gongzi Tianxing's accident. Perhaps there is some misunderstanding. While they haven't done anything and the palace hasn't been destroyed yet, you should go and plead with the monarch now. Perhaps there is still room for negotiation." The third prince frowned fiercely. His expression was very ugly and he remained silent. His eyes kept changing and he was hesitating and struggling in his heart. As the third prince of the kingdom of God, he knew the significance of the blood flame sacred tree and understood the monarch's personality very well. He deeply believed that the monarch would mercilessly kill everyone for the blood flame sacred tree, including him. Taking a deep breath, the third prince made up his mind and nodded slightly. "Zhenhong, stay here and don't act rashly. This prince will go and see the monarch now to understand the situation. Although it will be futile for me to plead. But in the current situation I can only do my best and leave the rest to fate." After saying that, he flew toward the monarch. At this time the monarch was standing outside the encirclement, looking at Ji Tianxing calmly. More than 3,000 imperial guards surrounded Ji Tianxing, and countless swords, spears and halberds were pointed at him. Swords were drawn, and a shocking murderous aura was brewing. As long as the monarch gave the order, a massacre would immediately erupt. "Son greets father." The third prince flew in front of the monarch and bowed respectfully. The monarch was in a good mood and he looked as if victory was in his hands. When he saw the third prince bowing, he squinted at the third prince and sneered. "Evil creature, look at what you've done." "This." The third prince was scolded in his face. He knew the reason but he could only pretend to be confused. "Father, I don't know what mistake I've made to make you so angry." The monarch's sneer deepened and he scolded sternly, "Bastard! Isn't that traitor one of your men? If you didn't think highly of him and support him, how could he enter the royal city and dare to snatch the sacred tree? Stand down first. After I kill him I'll slowly punish you for your crimes." Obviously the monarch knew the whole story of Ji Tianxing's rise. Everyone knew that Ji Tianxing and the third prince were very close. The third prince suddenly showed a terrified expression and bowed his head. "Father, please calm down. Father, you've misunderstood. Although I saw Tianxing's outstanding talent and did think of recruiting him. But he's definitely not one of my men. Between me and him, there is only a friendship between gentlemen and there is no collusion between us. Moreover, Tianxing stealing the sacred tree, is there any misunderstanding?" The monarch was immediately furious and his eyes flashed with a cold light. He shouted angrily, "Misunderstanding? You unfilial son, I've been injured by him and you still..." He said this sentence in anger, but halfway through he felt that it was inappropriate and quickly stopped. After all, there were thousands of people around. It was too embarrassing to let everyone know that he was seriously injured by Ji Tianxing. After calming down, the monarch pointed at Ji Tianxing in the distance and sneered at the third prince. "This is your friendship of gentlemen? That traitor dares to call himself a gentleman?" "This." The third prince was speechless. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "Father, please calm down. I'd like to ask him a few questions in person." The monarch nodded and sneered. "Go and tell him that the palace is already a trap and he can't escape. Tell him to stop resisting stubbornly. Surrendering on the spot is the right way to go." The third prince nodded and complied. He then turned around and flew towards Ji Tianxing. Swoosh. After passing through the encirclement, the third prince came to Ji Tianxing and stood 1,000 feet away from him. The two of them looked at each other, and the third prince's eyes and feelings were very complicated. After a moment, the third prince sighed and asked, "Why did you do this?" Ji Tianxing looked at him calmly and said, "I urgently need to improve my strength, and the blood flame sacred tree is very suitable. If I can get the sacred tree, I can save hundreds of years of hard work. This time I only want to get the treasure and I don't want to get involved in other disputes." The third prince smiled bitterly. "You know that the sacred tree is the foundation of the kingdom of God. Once you touch it, you'll definitely die. Why take this risk? In order to save hundreds of years of time, you'll lose your life." Why? Ji Tianxing smiled faintly and said calmly, "To me, this matter isn't that dangerous. Besides, I won't die." Chapter 3074. The third prince was speechless and could only smile bitterly. Only now did he realize that Ji Tianxing's confidence came from his bones. He and Ji Tianxing were people from two different worlds. He was completely unable to understand where exactly Ji Tianxing's absolute confidence came from. After pausing for a moment, the third prince continued, "Tianxing, with your intelligence and methods, you could have used other methods. Spend more time, devise a more detailed plan, and use a gentler method." Without waiting for him to finish, Ji Tianxing smiled and asked, "Use a gentler method to obtain the sacred tree? Won't the end result be the same? As long as I snatch the sacred tree, I will be mortal enemies with the blood flame divine kingdom. Moreover, this divine blood ceremony is the best opportunity. Why should I waste so much time and effort on something that can be easily solved?" The third prince was speechless again and sighed inwardly. "Yes. As long as you snatch the sacred tree, you will be mortal enemies with the divine kingdom. Even if I become the king, I will not forgive you. Otherwise, I will not be able to answer to my people, and I will not be able to face my ancestors." At this time, Ji Tianxing continued, "I have thought about it before. I have no enmity with the blood flame divine kingdom. I can pay the appropriate price or help the divine kingdom strengthen in exchange for the blood flame sacred tree. But this is not realistic. The king will not believe me. Even if I give him another divine kingdom, he will not give the sacred tree to me. So I can only dispel these childish thoughts. As an expert, I will not waste words if I can make a move. I have already obtained the blood flame sacred tree and will be leaving the capital soon. For the sake of our past relationship, I will not harm the innocent and spare your father's life. He and the people of the capital will exchange their lives for the blood flame sacred tree. It is that simple." "You spare my father's life?" the third prince asked in a strange tone, his expression very awkward. Obviously, Ji Tianxing was the one who was besieged and attacked by thousands of soldiers. Why did it feel like the tables had turned? It was as if he was the victor? At this moment, the second prince arrived just in time. He bowed to the monarch and asked about the situation briefly before flying towards Ji Tianxing. As soon as the two of them met, the second prince winked at Ji Tianxing and said with a playful smile, "You are really lawless. Today you have pierced through the heavens. You will be remembered by history for the next 1,000 years." "Second prince, you flatter me," Ji Tianxing said calmly. The second prince gave him a thumbs up and praised him sincerely. "Although you have committed such a capital crime, we must meet on the battlefield. But I still have to say this from the bottom of my heart, you're really awesome." Ji Tianxing nodded his head slightly and said, "You're still the one who's more clear-headed. You only look at the benefits and the situation and aren't tied down by personal feelings. The one I'm most worried about is the third prince. He's a little indecisive. The second prince grinned coldly. That's right. Therefore all the civil and military officials in the imperial court secretly discussed, saying that Benwang was an ambitious and ruthless hero in troubled times, while third brother was a wise ruler in prosperous times. But in Benwang's eyes he can only be a prince of peace. How can he compete with Benwang? Ji Tianxing ignored him and turned to the third prince. I know you're hesitant, but you must take action later and lead the imperial army to besiege me. If you want to keep your position as a prince, you must submit a proof of allegiance to the king. Moreover, you must sever all ties with me, only then can you prove your innocence to the people of Divine Kingdom. The third prince smiled bitterly and said, Benwang understands what you're saying. Actually, you're more suited for power struggles than Benwang. But it's a pity that your heart is higher than the heavens, and you don't care about the throne of Divine Kingdom, right? Ji Tianxing said with gratification, although your words are still conservative, it's already very rare for you to have made such progress. The third prince smiled awkwardly again, shocked by his confidence and domineering attitude. At this moment the king lost his patience and asked sternly, Third prince, how's your negotiation with the traitor? Why hasn't he knelt down to surrender and accept his death? The third prince knew that the time was up. He had to perform what he had to do. Therefore he looked solemn and shouted sternly, the traitor Tianxing stole the sacred tree and destroyed the foundation of Divine Kingdom. This is an unforgivable crime. Soldiers of the imperial army, immediately capture the traitor and hand him over to the king to serve as a warning to others. Although the third prince had ordered the imperial army to besiege Ji Tianxing in front of everyone. But he said to capture him alive, not to kill him on the spot. Obviously he still couldn't bear to see Ji Tianxing die. When the second prince heard this, he sneered in his heart. Third brother, you're too pedantic. Father is already dissatisfied with you, but you still have mercy in your heart. Aren't you courting death? How can you fight with Benwang with your soft-heartedness? The king also understood the meaning of the third prince's words. He narrowed his eyes and his gaze became colder. He added and shouted sternly, everyone attack and kill the traitor Tianxing on the spot. In this way the imperial army and the palace experts no longer had any scruples. They all went all out and charged at Ji Tianxing without caring about the cost. Earth-shattering battle cries erupted. Thousands of imperial army and the palace experts all brandished their Kenshin weapons and released divine light that covered the sky and earth, drowning Ji Tianxing's figure. Seeing this scene, the king's lips curled into a cold, evil smile. The second prince raised his eyebrows and thought it was a pity. The third prince frowned and his emotions were complicated. Zhenhong's heart was filled with grief. She could no longer hold back the tears in her eyes as they slid down her cheeks. No matter what kind of person Ji Tianxing was in other people's eyes. At least in her eyes he was the truest, most mysterious and noble young master, and she was indebted to him for giving her a new life. But now it was too late to say anything. Under the attacks of thousands of people, Ji Tianxing would definitely die. After all, 80% of the thousands of people were level 8 or level 9 heavenly gods and more than 500 divine lords. Even the king couldn't withstand such a powerful attack. However, no one saw Ji Tianxing standing in the sky, looking around calmly and murmuring to himself. I said I would spare your lives and I won't go back on my words. So, facing the first round of attacks from thousands of people, he chose to resist and didn't counterattack. Swish! Ji Tianxing floated into the divine pagoda the moment the sky was filled with attacks. Boom! Boom boom boom. In the next moment, thousands of divine light hit the divine tower and there was a deafening explosion. The colorful divine light covered the sky and the Soul Prayer Hall, the square and the palace around it. The Soul Prayer Hall and the 10 miles around it were instantly leveled. The palace and the houses were no longer there, only a giant pit left. Ji Tianxing also disappeared. Jutian 10 Absolute's tower also went underground and flew to the edge of the palace. In front of them was the defensive array of the palace. It was made up of 9 divine arrays and its power had reached the supreme grade of the monarch level. Ji Tianxing flew out of the divine tower and appeared at the gate of the palace. He clasped his hands and a sacred golden light appeared. World Cut. Chapter 3075. Ever since he came to the divine realm, Ji Tianqing rarely used the power of the five elements world. After all, the power of the world was too terrifying. When he was in the lower world, the world he used was enough to cut a star in half. Therefore he didn't dare to use it in the divine realm. He didn't want to cause too much of a disaster and attract the attention of many overlords. Because, other than him, no one else could control the power of the world. As Ji Tianqing shouted, a holy light blade tens of thousands of feet long, as dazzling as the sun, slashed the defensive array of the royal palace. With a loud boom, a huge gully was cut open on the spot on the seven-colored barrier that looked like a canopy in the sky. Dense cracks spread out from the ravine, spreading in all directions. The entire formation was shaking violently, emitting cracking noises as it was on the verge of collapsing and dispersing. After the bright golden light blade broke the defensive array, it flew a few hundred miles to the south. It followed the bluestone road in the center of the royal palace and formed a straight line, leaving a huge ravine on the ground like an abyss. The entire royal palace was split in half by this abyss. While it was shaking violently, a huge amount of dust flew up. After the holy light blade flew out of the royal palace, it split a dozen mountains and extended for 8,000 miles before gradually dissipating. Such an earth-shattering commotion woke up the entire royal city and frightened the millions of people. But Ji Tianqing's control of his power was perfect. Even though the power of the world was so terrifying, it didn't kill anyone. Swoosh. His body flashed and he passed through the gap in the royal palace's array and left the royal palace. He flew into the sky, crossed the panicked royal palace and flew into the distance. Before he left, he turned around to take a look. The thousands of people in the palace, including the monarch, were all dumbfounded and rooted to the ground. Everyone was dumbfounded. Not only was he safe and sound, but he also broke the royal palace's defense with one move and slashed the royal palace in half. Such apocalyptic might was simply not something a divine lord could achieve. Everyone felt a chill down their spines and a chill ran down their spines. Many people had the same thought. If that move of his had not been aimed at the palace's array but at us instead, who would have survived? Could it be that he had shown mercy to us? How is this possible? While everyone was still in a daze, Ji Tianqing turned and left. The monarch was the first to react. He was so angry that his face turned green. He roared loudly, "Chase! Even if we have to chase him to the ends of the earth, we must kill him." Many imperial guards and experts rushed out of the palace and chased after Ji Tianqing. The monarch personally led thousands of people and charged over in a grandiose manner. The two princes did not dare to fall behind and hurriedly followed. Zhenhong burst into tears of joy. His hanging heart finally settled down and he hurriedly followed them. After escaping from King City, Ji Tianqing flew all the way to the south at lightning speed. The imperial army and royal palace experts were quickly left in the dust. Only the monarch took the lead and chased after them furiously. 1,000 miles behind him were the two princes and several high divine lords. Before he knew it, 4 hours had passed. It was close to noon and the sun was high in the sky. At this moment, Ji Tianqing was 200,000 miles away from King City and was in a vast mountain range. Looking around, there was an endless mountain range that stretched to the horizon, but there was no city in sight. White clouds surrounded him, and the blazing sun hung high in the blue sky. Ji Tianqing stopped, still calm and composed. He turned and looked at the monarch who was chasing after him. Swoosh! The monarch stopped 100,000 feet away, panting in rage and glaring at him with bloodshot eyes. "Renegade! Don't even think about escaping from me. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, I will use the power of the divine kingdom to kill you and take back the sacred tree." The monarch held the blood sea stupa in his left hand and the dark golden divine sword in his right. He pointed at Ji Tianqing and roared with killing intent. There were only the two of them in a radius of 10,000 miles. The two princes and a few high divine lords were still 10,000 miles away and had not caught up yet. Ji Tianqing looked at the monarch calmly and said, "I have the sacred tree and I will never return it. You should give up. Also, I held back just now and did not hurt any innocent people. If you insist on pestering me, don't blame me for being rude." "Ah, what a joke." The monarch laughed in anger and cursed, "Renegade, are you still going to play dumb? I said long ago that the sacred tree is the foundation of the divine kingdom, the foundation of the divine kingdom. Even if I die here, I will never let you take the sacred tree. Today it's either you die or I die. There is no other choice. There was something he did not say, but both of them knew. If Ji Tianqing really took the sacred tree, the news would spread throughout the divine kingdom, and he would have to abdicate as a divine lord. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "Fine, since you are so stubborn, I will fulfill your wish." With that, he waved the burial of heaven with his right hand and used sword breaking 9 heavens to attack the monarch. The dazzling golden sword, which was 10,000 feet tall, fell from the sky with a divine power that could destroy everything. The monarch did not back down. He waved his divine sword and used his ultimate skill, charging at Ji Tianqing without any regard for his own safety. Bam, 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 boom, boom. The sky full of sword lights clashed, creating a deafening sound. The two of them had only exchanged 4 moves, and the already injured monarch was sent flying again by Ji Tianqing. His injuries were even worse. The monarch vomited blood and was extremely angry. He put away his divine sword and waved the floating blood sea toward Ji Tianqing. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing frowned and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He waved the burial of heaven again, absorbing the light of the 5 elements world, and slashed out a dazzling golden sword with all his strength. Zhoosh! The divine sword light, which was 10,000 feet long, cut through all obstacles, split the blood waves in the sky and hit the monarch. Bam! There was a dull sound and the monarch's left arm and left leg were cut off. Blood splattered all over the sky as he flew back in a sorry state. The sword light formed by the power of the world flew for another 6,000 miles and split open 8 mountains before gradually dissipating. Plop! After flying for 1,000 miles, the monarch fell into the broken mountains and was buried by the ruins. After suffering such heavy injuries, he almost lost half of his body and couldn't help but groan in pain. However, he gritted his teeth and struggled to climb out of the ruins to attack again. However, as soon as he left the ruins, a cold black sword was pressed against his forehead. The monarch looked up and saw Ji Tianqing looking down at him. The burial of heaven shone with a faint black light and emitted a cold aura of death, which made the monarch feel cold all over. The monarch opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he swallowed his words. He had already lost. If he said anything more, it would only make him look ridiculous. Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "This time I will spare your life and the lives of 5 million people in the royal city. I have already fulfilled my promise. Your lives in exchange for the sacred tree. We are even. If you continue to argue, you will definitely die." Chapter 3076. After saying that, Ji Tianqing put away the sword of burial of heaven, turned around and left. The monarch stood in the ruins in a daze. He looked like he had lost his soul. A strong sense of defeat and humiliation welled up in his heart. He could not understand how he had lost so thoroughly. Previously in the Blood Flame secret realm he had fought Ji Tianqing for several hours. Am I supposed to admit defeat just like that and let him take the sacred tree? No. Impossible. That's the foundation of the divine nation. It's my life. I may have lost to him, but I still have the entire divine nation. Even if I have to gather all the experts in the kingdom, I'll tear him to pieces and avenge my humiliation. At that thought, the monarch immediately took out a few communication jade slips and sent out a few orders. He wanted to gather all the experts in the divine nation and mobilize all the higher divine lords to encircle and annihilate Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing could not be allowed to leave the Blood Flame divine nation alive. Ji Tianqing was only 3,000 miles away when the monarch sent out the orders. Suddenly, a cold voice rang out from the sky. "Despicable bastard! How dare you run away after committing such a heinous crime?" It was the voice of a young man. It was cold and murderous, containing a lofty dignity. When the voice reverberated in the sky, a ball of 5-colored divine light descended from the sky and blocked Ji Tianqing's path. After the divine light dissipated, a figure appeared. The newcomer was a great Yen divine tribe youth who was nearly 10 feet tall and wore a black dragon robe with golden patterns. He had a head full of red hair and a refined and handsome face. He exuded a noble aura. It was Grand Prince Lian. He stood proudly in the sky with his hands behind his back. He looked coldly at Ji Tianqing with a disdainful sneer on his lips. His expression was as though he was saying to Ji Tianqing, "You've finally gotten what you deserve. You brat, you've finally fallen into this king's hands." Ji Tianxing also looked at Grand Prince Lian. He sneered and said, "You've been waiting for me, but I've also been waiting for you. I thought you'd appear in the royal city. I didn't expect you to be even more patient than I imagined, and your schemes are even more vicious. You actually waited until now to show yourself. You are indeed vicious." Before the operation, Ji Tianxing had predicted that Prince Lian would take the opportunity to make a move. This was indeed the case. Moreover, Prince Lian was not in a hurry to make a move in Imperial City. He had to wait until the monarch was severely injured before he coincidentally appeared to kill Ji Tianxing. His sinister intentions were clear as day. As expected, the monarch immediately frowned and tried to figure out what Ji Tianxing meant. Prince Lian furrowed his brows and hurriedly bowed to the monarch. He said in a clear voice, "Your Majesty, I came to help as soon as I received the news, but I was still a step too late. I'm very sorry. But rest assured, Your Majesty, with this king here, I will not let the traitor escape, nor will I let the sacred tree wander outside." In fact, Prince Lian's status was half a level higher than the monarch's. Since Prince Lian had changed the topic and solemnly expressed his stance, the monarch could only cup his hands and return the gesture. "I was careless and was actually plotted against by the traitor. I'm really ashamed and have made a fool of myself in front of Prince Lian. Since Prince Lian is so righteous and is willing to kill the traitor, I am very grateful." The monarch thought that even if Prince Lian had a plot or a motive, it was not important. At least Prince Lian was more powerful. If he could successfully kill Ji Tianxing and take back the blood flame sacred tree, it would be a great blessing. At this moment, the second and third princes rushed to the scene with 5 imperial army commanders. There was a dazzling flash of white light and 6 figures appeared on the scene. The leader was the 5th prince. He sat on the lotus platform with a pale face and his legs were still empty. His injuries had recovered slightly and he was not in a serious condition, but he could not participate in the battle. The other 5 were the upper divine monarchs under Prince Lian. The leader was that 8th stage realm purple-robed elderly man, and the other 2 ferocious-looking men were still suffering from the lethal poison. With so many experts arriving, the area immediately became lively. Prince Lian stood in front of Ji Tianxing while the monarch guarded Ji Tianxing's back. The 3 princes and many upper divine monarchs stood to the left and right respectively. Ji Tianxing was surrounded in 4 directions. The monarch circulated his energy to suppress his injuries and frowned at the 5th prince. He asked, "Little 5th, why are you here instead of recuperating?" The 5th prince looked at Ji Tianxing with a sinister smile and said in a mocking tone, "If I miss such an exciting show, won't I regret it for the rest of my life? Moreover, this bastard has caused me to be in such a miserable state. If I can't see him being torn into pieces with my own eyes, how can I dispel the hatred in my heart?" The 5th prince's eyes and tone were filled with hatred and resentment. It made one shudder. The monarch frowned and felt uncomfortable. As the monarch of a country, he did not want his successor to be such a vengeful person. But with so many experts in front of them, he could not blame the 5th prince. Therefore, the monarch stared sharply at Ji Tianxing and asked in a dignified tone, "Traitor, things have come to this, do you still want to struggle?" Prince Lian smiled confidently and said to Ji Tianxing, "Bastard, why aren't you kneeling and begging for surrender? Are you waiting for me to do it myself?" The 5th prince revealed a sinister smile and growled with a bloodthirsty face, "Bastard, don't think that you can die so easily. I'll cut your body 108,000 times to vent my hatred." The 2nd and 3rd princes looked indifferent. They turned their heads and did not look at Ji Tianxing's reaction. They did not say anything either. Seeing everyone's reaction, Ji Tianxing shook his head. "Other than Prince Lian, you can cause me some trouble. Just based on you bunch of clay chickens and pottery dogs, you dare to make this sovereign surrender?" He smiled and said to the monarch, "Monarch, I spared your life just now. Or even now. Since you still want to pester me, you can sleep here forever." He looked at the 5th prince and sneered, "I was thinking about finding a chance to get rid of you. Since you're so sensible and delivered yourself to me, I don't have to waste my time. A family should be neat and tidy. With you accompanying your father, he won't be lonely on the road to the netherworld." The 5th prince and the monarch's expressions changed immediately. They were so angry that they almost went berserk. "Bastard! You lowly reptile!" The 5th prince cursed with a twisted face. The monarch was also furious. He laughed in extreme anger and said, "If I don't punish a heinous traitor like you and torture your divine soul for 10,000 years, how can I convince the public? Kill." Everyone attacked together and kill him. Following the monarch's order, the two princes and several commanders of the imperial army brandished their swords and sabers and attacked Zhi Tianxing. Prince Lian also attacked personally. He waved his hand and blue flames formed thousands of sharp blades to strangle Zhi Tianxing. Of the 5 monarchs under his command, 2 were protecting the 5th prince while the other 3 attacked. Instantly, Zhi Tianxing was surrounded by 11 high-level monarchs and fell into a life-and-death situation. Especially when Prince Lian, a level 9 divine monarch, was among the 11 experts. This was the most dangerous battle he had ever fought since he entered the God realm. Chapter 3077. 11 experts besieged Zhi Tianxing. Prince Lian was a 9th heaven monarch god. If Zhi Tianxing fought them head-on, he would die. Even if he used the 9th heaven 10 absolutes pagoda, he would only be able to defend himself. Therefore, when the experts besieged him, he had already used the law of space and teleported 300 miles to the east. The group of people in the east was the 2nd prince, the 3rd prince, and the 4 imperial army commanders. Not only were they weaker, but the 2 princes would also not kill them. Therefore, Zhi Tianxing easily broke through their defense line and teleported to the mountain peak in the distance. Then he teleported away without looking back. Swoosh, swoosh. He was enveloped by the white light of space and kept flashing between heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, he had teleported a few thousand miles. Seeing this, the monarch was furious. "Go after him. If he escapes, I will punish the both of you." The monarch had obviously put the blame on the 2 princes. The 2 princes did not kill him, but they had put up a good show and put in a lot of effort. The monarch did not ask for the truth and just threw the blame on them. The 2 brothers felt wronged and wronged. Swoosh, swoosh. The monarch took the lead, leading 2 princes and a few commanders of the imperial army to chase after Zhi Tianxing, regardless of everyone else. However, Grand Prince Lian chased after him unhurriedly. He even sent a voice transmission to the 5 divine lords under his command. "Everyone be careful. That bastard is very cunning. He must be trying to stretch the battle line and destroy us one by one." The monarchs felt the same and nodded to show that they understood. The facts proved that Prince Lian was right. Zhi Tianxing was not running away. Instead, he disintegrated the encirclement and spread out to destroy it. When he teleported away, he secretly used the law of poison and left an invisible poison in the air. Of course, it was the kind of poison that was very subtle and not easy to detect. The monarch was seriously injured and the 4 imperial army commanders were slightly weaker, so it was very easy for them to be poisoned. Moreover, the monarch was in a hurry to kill Zhi Tianxing and was afraid that he would escape. In a full pursuit, the monarch's guard was lowered. Soon 15 minutes passed. Zhi Tianxing had continuously teleported 90,000 miles. His divine power was greatly depleted and his face was a little pale. He calculated the time and realized that the poison was about to take effect, so he slowed down. When he released his divine sense to check the situation behind him, however, he discovered that the person closest to him was Prince Lian. The 2 of them were only 20 miles apart. However, the king, the 2 princes, and the 4 commanders of the imperial army were still thousands of miles away. Magic blade hover. Prince Lian looked at Zhi Tianxing with a cold smile. He waved his palms and sent out a sky full of light blades. More than 3,000 flashing golden light blades enveloped Zhi Tianxing like countless guillotines, carrying a brilliant divine might. Zhi Tianxing did not dare to underestimate him. He quickly used the celestial dragon tyrant body and raised his combat power to the extreme. He also brandished the sword of burial of heaven, slashing out sword lights that blotted out the sky, blocking Grand Prince Lian's attack. Bang 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 bang. The sky full of light blades collided with each other, creating a deafening sound that reverberated in the sky. The sword lights and light blades collapsed one after another, bursting out divine light fragments that blotted out the sky. Although Zhi Tianxing gave it his all, he was still slightly inferior and was sent flying. After all, he had just broken through to the 5th degree not long ago. As for Prince Lian, he had broken through to the 9th degree many years ago. It was too difficult for Zhi Tianxing to defeat him. Swoosh. Zhi Tianxing had just retreated 100 miles away when he stabilized himself. However, Prince Lien chased after him and sent out dozens of mountain-sized fist shadows. Every fist shadow contained a faint blue flame that intimidated Ji Tianqing's divine soul, causing his consciousness to blur and become dizzy. Obviously, these fist shadows contained a lot of law power that specifically countered the soul. Ji Tianqing could only be cautious and keep his soul clear. He also used the Dragon Elephant Divine Fist and the Celestial Dragon Proud Slash. Boom boom boom. All sorts of divine abilities collided with each other, causing another earth-shattering explosion as they exploded into fragments that filled the sky. Ji Tianqing was still no match for Prince Lien and was sent flying another 100 miles into the majestic mountain range. He regained his composure and rushed out of the ruins. At this moment, the 8th degree realm purple-robed old man suddenly appeared and brandished his saber diagonally, slashing out 2 violent blood blades. Ji Tianqing was caught off guard and it was too late for him to dodge. At the critical moment he risked his own injuries and used all his strength to launch a counterattack. River of Stars Break. He resisted the 2 blood blades and held the Sword of Burial of Heaven with both hands. He slashed out 1,000 feet long starlight towards the purple-robed elder. Bang bang. A dull sound exploded as golden light flashed and blood splattered. Ji Tianqing was struck by the 2 blood blades, 2 wounds were left on his back and countless golden lights splashed out. The purple-robed elder was also cut in half by the starlight and his legs flew out and shattered into pieces. The result was horrifying. Ji Tianqing paid the price of a light injury to severely injure the purple-robed elder and cut him in half. The purple-robed elder was sent flying and fell into the ruins. He screamed in pain. However, Prince Lien didn't frown. His eyes were still cold and clear as he continued to attack Ji Tianqing. To him it didn't matter if his subordinates were injured. As long as he could injure Ji Tianqing it was fine. Limitless Heaven Tilting Palm. Prince Lien's robe fluttered and his body emitted a 7-colored divine light. He waved his palms and blocked the sky for 1,000 miles. Ji Tianqing had nowhere to hide and could only fight back with all his might. Limitless Heaven Capturing Dragon Palm. In the past when he was weak he could only use this technique together with Yunyao. Presently he was already a middle-level divine lord. Executing this divine ability and ultimate skill again, its might was formidable to the extreme. Above the 9th heaven, 2 enormous golden dragon claws that blotted out the sun appeared and slammed toward Prince Lien. Boom boom boom. The golden dragon claws were invincible and destroyed all the palms in the sky. However, Prince Lien changed his move in time and punched twice, shattering the golden dragon claws. The 2 of them were actually evenly matched in strength in this clash. Prince Lien sneered. "Ha! You've grown very fast. You've only entered the Blood Flame secret realm once and you're already on par with me. If I don't kill you today you'll become a huge threat in the future." Although Prince Lien was very confident and domineering, he was very shrewd and cunning. He had never underestimated Ji Tianqing. Instead he valued him very much. Therefore he was determined to get rid of Ji Tianqing today. At this moment the king, the 2 princes and the 4 imperial army commanders finally arrived. "Kill!" The monarch roared angrily. Without another word he waved the Blood Sea Pagoda and charged towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing stared at him and the corners of his mouth curled up into a sneer. Seeing that the king was coming at him aggressively he didn't counterattack. Instead he silently said, "Explode." Thus, the invisible poison that had invaded the king's body was instantly detonated. The king's body suddenly swelled and all his veins bulged. Black smoke rose from his body and black blood spurted out. Just as he charged in front of Ji Tianqing he came to an abrupt stop and fell from the sky. Chapter 3078. Plop. The king fell from the sky and smashed into the ruins of the mountain range, causing dust to fly everywhere. By the time he crawled out of the ruins he was already beyond recognition. It was a tragic sight. Not only was his body as black as charcoal but it was also emitting thick black smoke. All his skin and flesh were rapidly rotting, revealing his blackened divine bones. His meridians were broken, and his flesh and blood had turned into mud, mixing with the mud and covering his body. The unparalleled pain made him tremble like a sieve. His throat, which had long been twisted, also let out a muffled roar. The lethal poison was rapidly corroding his divine body and invading his godhead. His divine body would be destroyed without a doubt, and his godhead would also be severely damaged. This ending was already irreversible. The two princes and the four imperial army commanders were all dumbfounded, their faces filled with horror. They had never imagined that the king, who had been so majestic just a moment ago, would be in such a miserable state now. What did Ji Tianqing do? The two princes knew Ji Tianqing the best. They immediately reacted and exclaimed in unison, "Lethal poison! You poisoned the king." At the thought of this, the two princes and the four imperial army commanders' expressions changed. They didn't dare to attack Ji Tianqing and hurriedly checked themselves to see if they were poisoned. At this moment, Ji Tianqing detonated the lethal poison in the four imperial army commanders' bodies. Bam! Bam! There were a few more muffled sounds. The four imperial army commanders' bodies stiffened, and they spat out pitch-black arrows of blood. The lethal poison in their bodies also erupted. Their flesh and blood turned black and black smoke rose from them. Their meridians were broken and their flesh and blood were corroded. They suffered inhuman pain and screamed as they fell to the ground. The two princes didn't need to look to know that their fates were not much better than the king's. Tianqing, how can you be so vicious? How can you be so cruel to us? The third prince was shocked and angry as he roared at Ji Tianqing. The second prince was also uneasy as he stared at Ji Tianqing warily. Unexpectedly, Ji Tianqing glanced at the two of them and said, "You are poisoned, but as long as I don't detonate the poison you will be fine." Hearing his words, the two princes heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly retreated. He didn't dare to attack Ji Tianqing, but he couldn't just stand by and watch. Thus, the two of them flew to the monarch's side to help him suppress the poison. Ji Tianqing wanted to take this opportunity to kill the monarch, but Prince Lian attacked again and sent him flying. Plop! He rolled and crashed into a mountain, causing half of the mountain to collapse. When he flew out of the ruins, his body was already shining with golden light, and divine blood was gushing out of his mouth and nose. This time Ji Tianqing suffered an internal injury, and the injury was not light. Before he could retaliate, the four divine lords rushed to the battlefield with the fifth prince. One of them took care of the fifth prince, while the other three attacked him without hesitation. Ji Tianqing frowned. His eyes flashed with cold, killing intent. He immediately used his trump card. Sky Vanquishing Sword Array. He used all his strength and even drew on the power of the sacred tree stored in the heaven-mending orb to release 20,000 giant swords. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The gigantic five-colored swords that blotted out the sky formed a sword net with a radius of 10,000 miles, sealing off this area. The giant swords flew back and forth, emitting a blinding divine light and releasing a divine power and sword will that could suppress heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing split half of his attention to control the 10,000 swords to block Prince Lian. The other half of his attention was on the fifth prince and the four divine lords. Die! He stared coldly at the fifth prince and shouted. With a thought, he controlled thousands of five-colored divine swords and turned them into a hurricane of swords that charged toward the fifth prince. The fifth prince's injuries had not healed. Although he could move freely, he couldn't participate in the battle. Seeing the devastating hurricane of swords coming toward him, he was so scared that his soul almost left his body. Retreat! Retreat! He tried his best to escape, but he was too slow. The divine lord who was taking care of him was also worried. He didn't care about anything else and tried to escape with him. However, the combined speed of the two of them was not as fast as the hurricane of swords. The two of them were about to be swept by the hurricane of swords and killed on the spot. The divine lord who was taking care of the fifth prince even wanted to jump out and block the hurricane of swords with his own body to protect the fifth prince. Seeing this, a thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind. I knew it. Prince Lian not only treats the fifth prince as his nephew, but also as a puppet to control the bloody flame divine country. He's protecting the fifth prince very carefully. At this moment, the three divine lords gave up on attacking Ji Tianqing and joined forces to block the hurricane of swords. Bang bang bang. The three of them used all their strength and performed all kinds of divine powers, trying to destroy the hurricane of swords. However, the hundreds of divine abilities and ultimate skills were all shattered. The three of them couldn't dodge in time and were swept by the hurricane of swords. Swish 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 swish. The three Sir Gods were engulfed by the storm of swords. They had to endure the attacks of the divine swords. Shards and blood splattered everywhere as they screamed in agony. After a while, when they used all their strength to rush out of the hurricane of swords, they were already covered in wounds and didn't look human anymore. The armor and clothes he was wearing had all turned into powder. All of them had broken limbs and were covered in wounds. Their divine bones and organs were exposed. After suffering such heavy injuries, their divine bodies were not far from collapsing. Fortunately, Prince Lian had been attacking Ji Tianxing fiercely and gradually used all his strength and trump cards. Ji Tianxing was under a lot of pressure and had to fight with all his strength. He only managed to block Prince Lian's fierce attacks with the help of the sword array. The three Sir Gods finally had a chance to catch their breaths. They retreated far away with lingering fear. The four of them joined forces to protect the fifth prince and retreated to the edge of the sword array. The purple-robed elder who had been cut in half at the waist also temporarily suppressed his injuries and protected the fifth prince with them. The six of them worked together to block the swords that filled the sky. It was very difficult for them to hold on. On the other side of the sword array, the monarch, the two princes and the four commanders of the imperial army were also in a miserable state. At this moment, the monarch's divine body was almost completely corroded by the poison and only his skeleton was left. However, countless swords came and cut the skeleton into pieces. His divine body was completely destroyed and his divine spark was also severely damaged. He could only escape from his body and hide in the Blood Sea Pagoda. The Blood Sea Pagoda was a supreme monarch-level divine artifact. Could block thousands of swords and still hold on tenaciously. The four commanders of the imperial army were also badly corroded by the poison and swept by the swords. They didn't hold on for long before their divine bodies were completely destroyed. Their divine sparks also escaped from their bodies and hid beside the two princes, hoping that the two princes could save them. However, the two princes couldn't even take care of themselves and were also badly injured by the giant swords in the sky. If it weren't for their life-saving divine artifacts, their divine bodies would have been destroyed long ago. How could they have the time to save the divine sparks of the four commanders? Just like this, they hid in the corner of the sword array and stubbornly held on while trembling. The center of the sword array became the battlefield of Ji Tianxing and Prince Lian. These two strongest experts were using all their skills and fighting without regard for anything else. Chapter 3079. Ji Tianxing could severely injure the monarch and many high-level divine lords with the sky-destroying sword formation. However, Grand Prince Lian was indeed extremely powerful. He also mastered more than 100 divine Dao laws, more than 300 divine powers, and 3 supreme-grade monarch divine artifacts. Compared to the monarch, he was more than one level stronger. Ji Tianxing had used up too much of his divine power. Even with the support of the heaven-mending pearl, he could quickly replenish his divine power. However, he was limited by his cultivation level and could not defeat Grand Prince Lian. Even if he gave it his all, he could only fight Grand Prince Lian to a draw. However, most of the time he was still at a disadvantage and was constantly injured. Even with the celestial dragon tyrant body, his 100 feet tall body was covered in wounds and golden divine blood kept spilling out. On the other hand, Grand Prince Lian was not injured and was still in peak condition with abundant divine power. Ji Tianxing cursed in his heart. If the monarch had stopped him one day later, he would have cultivated in the blood flame secret realm for one more day. The result would have been different. As long as he broke through to the 6th level of the Divine Lord realm, he would have a chance to defeat Grand Prince Lian. Unfortunately, there was no chance today. He made up his mind to take care of the others today and seek revenge on Grand Prince Lian later. Grand Prince Lian was not in a hurry. He attacked in an orderly manner. He stared at Ji Tianxing and sneered. Tianxing, you are indeed the #1 genius in this small blood flame divine kingdom. However, you are just a frog at the bottom of a well. How would you know how many crouching tigers and hidden dragons there are in the Great Yan Empire? Now, do you understand the difference between you and me? Stop resisting. Your mission is complete. It's time to die. Ji Tianxing blocked his attacks and sneered. Ha! I'm a frog at the bottom of a well? That's hilarious. It's just the Great Yan Empire. It's no different from a pond in my eyes. I'm a great rock that soars in the 9 heavens. How can a sparrow like you compare to me? Forget it. I can't be bothered to talk to you about this. Ji Tianxing did not bother to talk to Grand Prince Lian. Even the Grand Prince was too lazy to argue. He was still high and mighty. After a pause, Ji Tianxing continued, "As for the mission you mentioned, are you going to use me to reshuffle the blood flame divine kingdom? I have already destroyed the monarch's divine body and severely damaged his godhead, making him unable to take charge of the situation. The two princes were also heavily injured and their forces were greatly weakened. With your support, the fifth prince will soon be able to take over the blood flame divine kingdom. Your goal will be achieved smoothly, right?" Prince Lian didn't deny it. He sneered and asked, "Isn't that so? If a traitor like you hadn't appeared, it would have taken some effort for this prince's plan to succeed. Now that you've helped this king get rid of the obstacle, this king has to thank you. Actually, this prince really admires you. Your intelligence and methods are almost on par with this prince's. However, it is precisely because you are too outstanding that this king will not recruit you. I only want to get rid of you as soon as possible. After all, even I can't control a renegade like you." Ji Tianxing had a playful smile on his face as he shook his head repeatedly. "It's rare to see someone as narcissistic as you. One day this king will let you know. A firefly cannot compete with the brightness of the moon. What you said today is laughable." Prince Lian frowned and was about to retort. At this moment, Ji Tianxing secretly controlled the sword formation to kill the fifth prince and the others. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Around the fifth prince and the others, 3,000 divine swords suddenly flew out and formed a small sword formation. Everyone was caught off guard. Before they could dodge, they were enveloped by the sword formation. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. 7-colored divine light danced in the air, sword light crisscrossed and flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The screams of the fifth prince and the 5 divine monarchs came out from the sword formation. This scene made Prince Lian's eyebrows twitch violently. His entire face turned ashen. Formation within a formation. You have been planning this for a long time. You have been secretly setting up this formation for a long time. Prince Lian immediately understood. Ji Tianxing was talking to him to distract him. Secretly, he had secretly gathered 3,000 divine swords and hid them around the fifth prince and the others. At the critical moment, the 3,000 giant swords instantly formed a formation, catching the fifth prince and the others off guard. How ruthless! Grand Prince Lian had no time to be angry. He immediately gave up on attacking Ji Tianxing and teleported to the front of the sword array. He hurriedly used his divine powers to destroy the small sword formation and save the fifth prince. Even if the 5 divine monarchs under his command were killed, he had to save the fifth prince. The fifth prince was not only his nephew, but also the most important chess piece in his hand. If the fifth prince died, his plan would be ruined. How could he control the bloody flame divine kingdom? He could not possibly be the king, right? He would not have the rightful title and he would be labeled as a thief of the country. Moreover, he was a criminal of the Great Yan Empire. If he took over the bloody flame divine kingdom and proclaimed himself the king, the Great Yan Emperor would not forgive him. Boom, boom, boom. Prince Lian waved his hands crazily and sent out hundreds of giant purple blades. Soon the small sword formation was destroyed. The 3,000 giant swords were smashed into pieces and scattered in all directions. Prince Lian's face froze when he saw what had happened. A towering rage rose in him. The fifth prince, the purple-robed elder, and the 2 divine monarchs had all been smashed into pieces by the sword formation. Not only were their divine bodies destroyed, but their godheads were also shattered into dozens of pieces. The 4 godhead pieces were mixed together and it was difficult to distinguish them. Only one divine monarch was lucky. His divine body was destroyed, but his godhead was preserved. Of course, his godhead was also badly damaged and he was in a coma. Grand Prince Lian almost went mad with anger. His eyes turned blood red as he muttered to himself, "How could this be? I had asked everyone to protect him. How could he still be killed? I was about to succeed. Why did it all go to waste? Tianxing, you and I are irreconcilable." At first he was still muttering, but in the end he was roaring and yelling. Prince Lian could no longer maintain his composure and confidence. He was so angry that he went berserk. "You despicable beast. I'm going to turn you into ashes." Prince Lian was so angry that he was trembling all over. He roared hysterically. He abruptly turned around and charged towards Ji Tianxing with the crimson flames of slaughter. At this moment, Ji Tianxing was doing something else very important. He controlled the heaven-destroying sword formation and threw the two heavily injured and bloody princes out of the formation. Then he used his ultimate skill to capture the Blood Sea Buddha. The second prince was the most seriously injured. He was already on the verge of losing consciousness. The third prince was slightly better. He was still conscious. The two brothers flew out of the formation and landed in the mountains with a loud thud, sending dirt flying everywhere. The third prince heaved a sigh of relief. He took out a divine pill and muttered, "He showed mercy in the end." Just as he finished speaking, he suddenly thought of a problem. Chapter 3080. The third prince suddenly realized what Ji Tianqing was up to. However, both he and the second prince were severely injured and could not do anything. Charge into the sword formation to save the monarch? That was not realistic at all. Firstly, they could not charge in. Secondly, even if they did, they would be killed on the spot by the sword formation. Moreover, there was no real father-son relationship between them and the monarch. It was more about power struggles and conflicts of interest. It was impossible for them to sacrifice their lives to save the monarch. Even for someone as ambitious as the second prince. The monarch being killed by Ji Tianqing was the best outcome. Inside the heaven-destroying sword formation, Ji Tianqing was in the middle of thousands of swords. He held the Bloody Sea Pagoda in his left hand and a blood-red divinity in his right. This was the monarch's divinity. Its surface was full of cracks. The monarch was severely injured. His divinity was severely damaged and he was on the verge of losing consciousness. He hid in the Bloody Sea Pagoda and was not killed by the thousands of swords. He was lucky enough to survive. However, Ji Tianqing easily captured the Bloody Sea Pagoda. He used a little trick and pulled out the monarch's divinity. "I spared your life and gave you a chance, but you were stubborn. Goodbye." Ji Tianqing looked at the monarch's divinity and muttered to himself expressionlessly. Then he clenched his right hand. Crack. The destructive power instantly crushed the monarch's divinity. The monarch of the theocracy was dead. He was dead. Ji Tianqing put the Bloody Sea Pagoda and the divinity fragments into the infinite space ring. He was about to plunder the divinity fragments of the other powerful fighters when Prince Lian charged over. Prince Lian seemed to have gone mad. He was wearing a black divine armor with golden patterns and holding the 7-star silver moon divine spear in his hand. He unleashed a divine art that covered the sky. He unleashed his combat power to the maximum. He used more than 30 divine Dao laws and swore to tear Ji Tianqing into pieces. Now only he and Ji Tianqing were left in the heaven-destroying sword formation. The other powerful fighters were all dead, and the two princes were thrown out of the sword formation. Ji Tianqing's plan had succeeded. It was time to retreat. He stared at Prince Lian, unhurriedly gripping his sword with both hands, and viciously slashed out with his strongest attack. Sword of Destruction. It still absorbed the power of the 5 elements world, slashing out endless golden light, destroying the heavens and the earth. The power of the world could create a world and it could also destroy a world. This strongest killing move consumed twice as much world energy as the world slash. Ji Tianqing wouldn't be able to use it a second time in a short period of time. Not only would it harm oneself, but it would also affect the 5 elements world, leading to accidents and disasters. Therefore, this sword strike contained his strongest strength and surging killing intent. Boom! With an earth-shattering boom, the sword of Armageddon cut through the divine light and shadow in the sky and hit Prince Lian hard. Prince Lian's golden-patterned black divine armor immediately cracked and a long crack appeared on it. His entire body was sent flying and his face was twisted in pain. Blood spurted out from his mouth and nose, and he couldn't help but let out a miserable cry. Swoosh! Prince Lian was sent flying 1,000 miles by the heaven-destroying sword formation, and he was attacked by countless sword radiances before finally falling onto the ruins. When he flew back into the sky, there was already a hole in his supreme-grade monarch divine armor, and there were more than 10 cracks on it. There was a deep wound from his chest to his abdomen, and his divine bones and organs could be seen clearly. Streams of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth and dripped onto his body. His hair was disheveled and his face was covered in blood. He no longer had the elegance and calmness from before. He had lost. He had lost to Ji Tianqing, whom he had looked down upon, belittled and looked down upon. Moreover, he had been severely injured by a single slash. If not for the 7-star silver moon divine spear, which had neutralized 40% of the power of the Sword of Armageddon, and the protection of the black gold divine armor, he would have been cut in half. The unparalleled sense of defeat and humiliation made Prince Lien's face contort, and his entire body trembled violently. He stared at Ji Tianxing with bloodshot eyes and roared in a low voice, "In 300 years, you are the first person to injure me so severely." Ji Tianxing had used his ultimate move, and his divine soul and body were exhausted. He wanted to find a place to rest. However, he could not reveal any flaws. He looked at Prince Lien calmly and sneered, "No, you are wrong. Not only did I injure you, but I will also kill you today. Everyone else is dead, and now it's time to send you on your way." As he spoke, Ji Tianxing slowly raised the Sword of Burial of Heaven, and began to accumulate his divine might. Prince Lien squinted his eyes and roared fiercely, "You very well. I will remember you forever. From this moment on, I will not rest until you die." After leaving behind these vicious words, Prince Lien turned around without hesitation and rushed to the edge of the heaven-destroying sword formation. In the process, Prince Lien held the 7-star silver moon divine spear with both hands, and used a forbidden secret skill to unleash his strongest attack. He used all his strength to pierce a hole in the heaven-destroying sword formation, and sword light shards flew everywhere. Swoosh! Seizing the opportunity before the gap closed, he dashed out in a flash and escaped the heaven-destroying sword formation. Then he fled without looking back. His figure flashed a few times and disappeared into the horizon. Phew! Seeing that Prince Lien had finally escaped, Ji Tianxing heaved a sigh of relief. He landed on the ruins from the sky, holding the Sword of Burial of Heaven with both hands. He half knelt on the ground, panting heavily. "The power of the world is strong, but I need to be strong enough to withstand it," he muttered to himself, and blood kept flowing out of his nose and mouth. His breath was getting weaker and weaker. On the surface, it looked like he was covered in wounds, and they were only superficial wounds that were not fatal. However, in reality he had used the power of the world 3 times today, and he had even used the Sword of Apocalypse. His divine body and divine spark could not withstand the backlash of the power. His meridians and bones were cracked, and his divine spark was also damaged. It was no exaggeration to say that his injuries were worse than Prince Lien's. However, the power of the Sword of Apocalypse was too terrifying, and it had shocked Prince Lien. Prince Lien could not figure out his strength, and that was why he was scared off by his bravado. If Prince Lien was crazy enough, he would have lost his mind and continued to fight with him. That would have been a different outcome. Luckily, the worst outcome did not happen. Ji Tianxing panted silently for a moment, and continued to absorb the power of the heaven-mending orb to suppress his injuries. After a full 10 breaths, he recovered slightly. "Luckily, I am the only one left in the sword formation and no one saw me," Ji Tianxing muttered and waved his hand to remove the heaven-destroying sword formation. He took the Sword of Burial of Heaven and flew into the sky. He looked around and found that the 2nd and 3rd princes had disappeared. They had left long ago. "Forget it, let's ignore them for now. I need to find a place to heal." After making up his mind, Ji Tianxing put away the Sword of Burial of Heaven and was about to leave. At this moment, a bloody light came toward him, and Prince Lien's cold laughter suddenly sounded. "Ha! This king didn't guess wrongly. You were bluffing." Ji Tianxing looked up and saw that Prince Lien had returned. Chapter 3081. Just a moment ago, Prince Lien ran away impatiently. But now he actually came back. The reason was that when he ran away, Ji Tianxing did not chase after him. This made him suspicious. He suspected that Ji Tianxing was bluffing, but in reality he was a coward on the inside and strong on the outside. So he quietly rushed back to the battlefield and hid in the dark to observe the situation. He patiently waited for a moment, and sure enough he saw Ji Tianxing remove the heaven-punishing sword formation. His face was pale and his breath was weak as he vomited blood. This allowed him to be very sure that Ji Tianxing was indeed heavily injured. "Boy, you want to fight with this prince? You're still too inexperienced." Prince Lien held the 7-star silver moon divine spear and approached Ji Tianxing step by step, laughing with a face full of ridicule. He was in a very carefree and proud mood. He could see through Ji Tianxing's real situation and successfully counterattack. This proved that he was more shrewd than Ji Tianxing. In his opinion, Ji Tianxing would undoubtedly die this time. Ji Tianxing's heart was also full of shock. He did not expect Prince Lian's thoughts to be so meticulous. It was simply too difficult to deal with. To deal with Prince Lian, one must go all out and be careful and cautious. The slightest flaw would be seized by the other party. However, Ji Tianxing did not panic or fear. As usual, he was calm and indifferent. This prince has to admit that I underestimated you before. But do you think that just because you can see through this lord's background, victory is in your grasp? Ji Tianxing's mouth hooked up into a sneer, and his eyes coldly looked at Prince Lian. Although he suffered from the backlash of the world's power and was indeed seriously injured, and his strength fell greatly, but he still had many life-saving trump cards, and was still Prince Lian's strongest opponent. Not to mention that the Jiutian Tenju Pagoda could always protect Ji Tianxing from Prince Lian's attacks. The five elemental world alone had merged with Ji Tianxing's body. They lived and died together, giving him an immortal body. And the five elements world was hidden in the heaven-mending pearl, so it was impossible for Prince Lian to break through the heaven-mending pearl. Ji Tianxing was already in an invincible position. However, Prince Lian didn't know about this. He sneered contemptuously, "Little bastard, you're about to die and you still want to deceive me? Now that you've suffered a backlash and are heavily injured to such an extent, how much of your strength do you have left? How many moves can you block from this king? Since you're so confident, why waste time? Repeated probing? Let's fight to the death." Ji Tianxing held the Heaven Barrier sword with both hands. He accumulated a vigorous and violent sword will and pointed it at Prince Lian. As he spoke, he secretly absorbed the power of the heaven-mending orb to suppress his injuries and recover his strength as quickly as possible. Prince Lian was not in a hurry to make a move. He continued to sneer, "Brat, I've already seen through your true colors and you still want to play this trick? Don't worry, if you want to die, then I will definitely satisfy you. But you're already at the end of your rope and you're all alone. No matter what you do, you're just struggling on your deathbed. And the experts under this king's command will be here soon." When the monarch was alive, he issued an order to gather all the monarchs around the capital to attack you. At most, in 15 minutes, a large number of people will arrive. At that time, I will kill you in front of everyone, understand? Ji Tianxing frowned and said with contempt, "Not only are you scheming and unscrupulous, you're also good at maximizing benefits. Even if I kill the fifth prince, you can't control the blood flame divine kingdom through puppets. But you still want to kill me in front of everyone, take the credit for yourself and win the favor of the people of the blood flame divine kingdom. You still haven't given up and want to seize the blood flame divine kingdom." Ji Tianxing clearly saw through Prince Lian's thoughts and goals. Compared to the monarch and the three princes, Prince Lian was the most difficult opponent to deal with. Prince Lian didn't deny it and sneered, "It's good that you understand my thoughts. Cooperate with me obediently and put on a good show for the people of the divine kingdom." Ji Tianxing waved the barrier of heaven in his hand and took the initiative to attack Prince Lian. Dream on. His injuries were basically under control, so there was no point in stalling for time. The injuries to his divine body and divine soul would take a long time to recover. Instead of dragging it out until the monarchs attacked and Prince Lian's scheme succeeded, it was better to end the battle as soon as possible. Heavenly Dragon World / Ji Tianxing snorted coldly as he waved the Heaven Barrier sword and unleashed 1,000 long sword radiance toward Grand Prince Lian. Even though he was severely injured and only had 60% of his strength left. But the sword radiance was still dazzling and the sword intent was still violent. The golden sword radiance was like the shadow of a divine dragon. It let out an earth-shattering roar and instantly drowned Prince Lian. Swoosh! Prince Lian's body flashed and teleported 300 miles away, dodging the sword radiance by a hair's breadth. Kaboom! Amidst the deafening noise, the dragon shadow greatsword fiercely slashed the ground, splashing up dust that covered the sky. 100-mile-long gully was created on the ground. It was like an abyss. Before Ji Tianxing could make another move, Prince Lian had already swung the 7-star silver moon divine spear and launched a counterattack. Sky Roaring Dragon. He and Ji Tianxing went tit for tat. With the intention of competing, he also used a skill related to the divine dragon. Roar. A crimson dragon shadow that was more than 20,000 feet long let out an earth-shattering roar as it dove down from the sky towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing also teleported 300 miles to the right. Boom! There was an earth-shattering noise as the crimson dragon shadow slammed into the ground. A deep crater with a radius of 50 kilometers was immediately blasted into the ground that was already in ruins. An endless amount of sand and dust flew high into the sky, making the area hazy and blurry. Ji Tianqing swung his sword and used a few more Sword Dao divine powers to attack Prince Lian. However, Prince Lian had made up his mind not to fight him head-on. He kept dodging and retreating. The reason he did this was to buy time and deplete Ji Tianqing's energy. In 15 minutes at most, a large group of divine lords would arrive and Ji Tianqing would not be able to escape. Ji Tianqing of course knew what Prince Lian was thinking. After failing to injure Prince Lian in 5 consecutive attacks, he did not waste any more energy and turned around to fly away. Seeing this, Prince Lian sneered and chased after him with his divine spear. "Ha! Kid, you can't hold on anymore? You still want to run away? You're too naive." Ji Tianqing ignored him and teleported with all his might. His body flashed in the sky. Prince Lian chased after him as fast as the aurora. Every time he caught up to Ji Tianqing he would wave his divine spear and launch an attack, unleashing a powerful killing move. Or he would use some sinister and strange hidden weapons in an attempt to severely injure Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing did not counterattack in case he was stalled by Prince Lian. He just kept increasing his speed to avoid Prince Lian's attacks. At critical moments, if he could not avoid an attack, he would rely on the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda to block it. Just like this, the two parties engaged in a chase and soon flew for tens of thousands of miles. Chapter 3082. Half an hour later. Ji Tianqing and Prince Lian had been chasing each other for 60,000 miles. Along the way they left a trail of destruction. The mountains and the earth were shattered and filled with ravines. Both of them had used up a lot of energy. Their energy was getting weaker and their speed was slowing down. After all, both of them were severely injured and didn't have time to heal. Their injuries were similar and neither of them had much of an advantage. Of course, Ji Tianqing's self-healing ability was stronger and his divine body was stronger. If he could stall for time he would definitely recover faster than Prince Lian. But he was alone and had no backup. He wasn't like Prince Lian who had a powerful force and could gather countless divine lords. So Ji Tianqing couldn't stall for time, let alone fight with Prince Lian. He had to get rid of Prince Lian and leave Royal City as soon as possible. He had to find a place to heal and refine the bloody fire sacred tree, which could also increase his strength. Starlight / 7 stars suppressing the world. The two of them continued the chase and Prince Lian kept attacking Ji Tianqing with his divine powers. Boom boom boom. The sky was filled with divine powers and they landed on the mountains with deafening sounds. Prince Lian was about to catch up with Ji Tianqing again. He took out a few concealed weapons and waved his hand, shooting out 5 silver sharp shuttles towards Ji Tianqing. At the same time he waved the 7-star silver moon divine spear and shot out hundreds of silver moonlight blades, which surrounded Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's divine soul was locked and he couldn't dodge. He could only block and fight back. He swung the sword of burial of heaven and created a golden sword aura to destroy the silver moonlight blades. But he couldn't fight back against the 5 silver spikes. He could only try to block them. At this critical moment, a furious dragon roar suddenly resounded in the sky. Roar. Following the deafening dragon roar, a blood-red figure that was 10,000 feet tall suddenly descended from the sky. Swish. After a flash of crimson light, the tall and strong figure appeared in front of Ji Tianqing. 5 silver spikes attacked, but they were blocked by the bloody light in the sky. Ping ping ping. Following a series of muffled explosions, the dazzling blood-red light wall was shattered and exploded into countless fragments. That tall and fit figure was also knocked back 1,000 feet, her body trembling continuously. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing acted in time and used his golden palm to support her back, stopping her. That was right. This 10,000 feet tall figure that was covered in bloody light was none other than Zhen Hong. In order to unleash all of her strength and rush over to rescue Ji Tianqing at the fastest speed possible, she did not hesitate to enter a berserk state. "Young master, how are your injuries?" She looked at Ji Tianxing anxiously and asked in a worried tone. I'm fine. Ji Tianxing shook his head and frowned. What are you doing here? Zhen Hong replied without hesitation, I'll save you. No, I'll help you. Ji Tianxing frowned again and said in a low voice, You know that I'm already an enemy of the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom, yet you still dare to help me? Do you want to become a public enemy of the Blood Flame Divine Kingdom like me? Zhen Hong nodded firmly and said, I've already made up my mind. Young master, you've given me a new life. Even if I have to become the enemy of the entire Divine Kingdom, I must repay you. Why are you doing this? Ji Tianxing's mood was quite complicated. He was very surprised by Zhen Hong's decision. At this time Grand Prince Lien rushed over with a hideous smile. What a pair of lovers. It's a pity that you two are about to go to the Yellow Springs together. Grand Prince Lien laughed as he waved his divine spear, shooting out starlight that covered a radius of 100 miles. Ji Tianxing swung the Burial of Heaven without hesitation, shooting out thousands of five-colored sword lights. Ping ping ping. A series of muffled explosions echoed between heaven and earth. The five-colored sword lights and the starlight blades were all shattered. The two were evenly matched, neither of them gaining the upper hand. Zhen Hong didn't make a move, but he had already made up his mind to help Ji Tianxing escape this place. So, when the sword lights and starlight shattered, she grabbed Ji Tianxing without hesitation, turned around and fled as fast as the aurora. Whoosh! Her whole body was burning with bloody flames as she burst out with all her potential and shot out like a cannonball. In just an instant she flew more than 200 miles away. Her tall and slender legs stomped on the ground, and she bounced more than 200 miles away again. She turned into a stream of bloody flames and sped through the mountains at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye she took Ji Tianxing and fled more than 1,000 miles away. At this time she flew into the sky and used the law of space to teleport. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The bloody light flickered in the sky. Her speed became faster and faster, leaving Grand Prince Lien further and further behind. Seeing this scene, Grand Prince Lien was so angry that his face turned green. His eyes were gloomy as he muttered, Damn bitch. Her strength and speed are so terrifying. Although Zhen Hong only had the strength of a 4th-level divine monarch, she didn't hesitate to consume her lifespan and burst out with extreme speed, which was comparable to a 7th-level divine monarch. And Grand Prince Lien was the same as Ji Tianxing. He had suffered extremely serious injuries. His current flying speed was not much faster than a 7th-level divine monarch's. This situation was rather awkward. Grand Prince Lien was a 9th-level divine monarch and his strength was many times stronger than Zhen Hong's. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't catch up to Zhen Hong. Instead, he was left further and further behind. Grand Prince Lien was already confident of victory. He chased after Ji Tianxing like a cat playing with a mouse. But now Zhen Hong suddenly appeared and ruined his plan. He had gone overboard again. How could he not be angry? But he was unwilling to give up. He could only endure his injuries and chase after Zhen Hong at the fastest speed. Swoosh! Swoosh! Zhen Hong and Grand Prince Lien, one in front and one behind, teleported in the sky. Soon 15 minutes passed. The two had chased for 100,000 miles, but they were still 100 miles away. Finally there was a turn for the better. In the sky ahead of them, a dazzling blood-red light appeared and rushed over as fast as lightning. Grand Prince Lien focused his eyes and found that there were 6 figures wrapped in the blood-red light. They were 6 old men with different appearances. They all wore the same black robes and their chests and lapels were embroidered with the royal insignia. Without a doubt they were the royal experts guarding the royal palace. They were the most loyal guards to the king of Blood Flame country. Usually they were responsible for the safety of the royal palace and the king. When the king had a secret order to deal with some important matters, they were the butcher's knife in the king's hand. Most importantly, those 6 imperial experts were all 7th stage realm upper-level god monarchs. When he recognized the 6 people, Grand Prince Lien revealed a smug sneer. The heavens are on my side. Although he didn't care about the royal experts at all. But now, the 6 royal experts were able to turn the situation around. Chapter 3083. Previously, the king and the two princes had led dozens of imperial guards and a few thousand imperial guards to hunt down Zhi Tianxing. However, after leaving the royal city, the imperial guards were left far behind. By the time the imperial guards arrived at the battlefield, the battle had already ended. The king had fallen, the two princes had escaped, and all of Prince Lian's subordinates were dead. No one knew what had happened, so they could only spread out and search for the whereabouts of the king and Zhi Tianxing. More than 60 imperial guards were divided into 10 teams. More than 3,000 imperial guards were also divided into 30 teams. And these 6 experts were obviously the luckiest ones. When they arrived nearby, they saw 2 balls of divine light chasing each other in the sky, so they rushed over to check the situation. When they were 100 miles away, they recognized Zhen Hong, who was running in front, and Prince Lian, who was chasing after him. Of course, there was also Zhi Tianxing, who was sitting on Zhen Hong's shoulder, covered in blood. Without needing any explanation, the 6 imperial palace experts charged at Zhen Hong without any regard for their own safety, desperately trying to stop him. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 6 elders all took out their divine weapons and unleashed dazzling 5-colored divine abilities and secret techniques to surround and attack Zhen Hong. Zhen Hong's tall figure was suddenly engulfed by the divine light in the sky. She had no choice but to stop running and use all her strength to defend herself. Zhi Tianxing also stopped healing himself and quickly counterattacked with his sword. Bang bang. All kinds of secret techniques and dazzling lights clashed in the sky, creating a deafening sound. Fortunately, Zhi Tianxing and Zhen Hong worked together to block the attacks of the 6 imperial guards. Unfortunately, the 2 of them were surrounded by 6 experts from the imperial palace. In a short time, they could not break out of the encirclement and get rid of the entanglement. Prince Lian took advantage of this opportunity to catch up. He was full of pride, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. Tianxing, this is your destiny. How dare you go against the entire blood-flame divine kingdom? This is a mantis trying to stop a chariot, an ant trying to shake a tree. Zhi Tianxing ignored him. He frowned and gloomily stared at the crowd. In fact, he was communicating with Zhen Hong via voice transmission to come up with a countermeasure. The 6 imperial palace experts were all armed with sabers and swords. They surrounded Zhen Hong and Zhi Tianxing, maintaining a high degree of vigilance. At the same time, the leading purple-haired old man said to Grand Prince Lian, "We pay our respects to Grand Prince Lian. We are currently in the process of killing the traitors, so it is inconvenient for us to salute your highness. Please forgive us. Dare I ask your highness, where are his majesty and the 2 princes? How are they doing?" These experts only obeyed the king's orders. They only treated Prince Lian with respect and courtesy. At the mention of the monarch, Prince Lian immediately showed a sorrowful expression. He pointed at Zhi Tianxing and cursed with righteous indignation, "It's this traitor, this goddamn bastard. He is so cruel and vicious that he actually killed the monarch in front of everyone." Upon hearing this news, the 6 experts froze and their expressions changed drastically. What? The monarch was actually killed? How is this possible? No matter how strong the traitor is, he can't possibly be a match for his majesty. The monarch is the ruler of the people. How could he? This is simply a heinous crime that angers both man and God. The 6 experts exclaimed in shock. They were extremely agitated and furious. Naturally, they believed that Grand Prince Lian would not speak nonsense. Their hatred and killing intent towards Zhi Tianxing had also reached its peak. 6 pairs of eyes were bloodshot from the murderous aura. Kill him. Avenge his majesty. This traitor must be killed to appease the people. Betraying the theocracy and killing the monarch is a heinous crime. How can he be forgiven? We will kill this traitor even if we have to exhaust all the power of the theocracy. There was no need for Grand Prince Lian to instigate. The 6 experts could no longer hold back their murderous aura and attacked recklessly. Xianming Divine Blade. Blood Spirit Seal. Emperor Destroyer Sword. 4 Seas God Sealing Blade. The 6 of them used all their strength to unleash their killer moves. They released a sky full of divine powers and charged towards Zhen Hong and Zhi Tianxing. In an instant, the area within 100 miles was flooded by the divine powers. The area was in complete chaos. The mountains and the earth were crushed into ruins. Ji Tianxing and Jin Hong could only try their best to resist and try to fight back. The two of them also unleashed a sky full of sword aura, divine dragon shadow and blood fire. Boom. All kinds of divine powers and secret arts clashed, creating a deafening sound that reverberated between heaven and earth. Another apocalyptic battle broke out high in the sky. Grand Prince Lien stood 200 miles away in the sky and watched all this with a mocking expression. He was not in a hurry to make a move. He just watched the 6 experts fight Ji Tianxing and Jin Hong. He knew very well that Ji Tianxing and Jin Hong could still hold on for a while. He wanted the 6 experts to exhaust Ji Tianxing and Jin Hong's strength first. Then he would make a move and kill Jin Hong and Ji Tianxing in one fell swoop to reap the fruits of victory. This was the fisherman who benefited when the sandpiper and the clam fought. He wanted to get the biggest reward at the smallest cost. Soon 100 seconds passed. Ji Tianxing and Jin Hong fought back with all their might, but they could only fight to a draw. The 6 experts attacked crazily for a long time, but they still couldn't kill the other party. They became angrier and angrier, so they used their forbidden secret arts. At the cost of their lifespan and divine blood, they unleashed their most powerful combat power. Boom boom boom. Dozens of divine powers and secret arts that were doubled in power poured down like a flood, drowning Ji Tianxing and Jin Hong. The pressure on the two of them doubled and the situation became extremely dangerous. Jin Hong was already covered in wounds. Blood kept gushing out of the wounds all over his body. Ji Tianxing's strength was getting weaker and his injuries were getting worse. Under such circumstances, Jin Hong looked determined. He pursed his lips and fought back without saying a word. She had already made up her mind. Even if she died here with Ji Tianxing, she would never back down or regret. But Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a while. He had no choice but to make a decision. Swish. He took out the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Tower and planned to take Jin Hong into the Divine Tower to hide temporarily. With the invincible defense of the Divine Tower, no one could do anything to them. When the time came, they could heal their injuries in the distorted space. When their injuries were healed and their strength recovered to the peak, they could kill Prince Lien and the experts. However, they couldn't leave the Divine Tower. By then, countless divine emperors and imperial guards would arrive and they would be surrounded. It would be impossible for them to escape. Ji Tianxing and Jin Hong were about to enter the Divine Tower. Right at this moment, a blood-red saber light that was thousands of feet long suddenly appeared in the sky. It was so powerful that it could split the sky and earth apart. Swish. The sharp and narrow blood-red saber light had a rather strange appearance, and it was filled with extremely violent killing intent. The blade aura cut across the sky silently and appeared on the battlefield like a ghost, slashing 2 experts. Bang bang. Following 2 muffled explosions, the bodies of the 2 Imperial Palace experts were decapitated. 2 heads flew into the sky and hot blood spurted out from their necks. Once the evil blade was used, there would be a bloodbath. Chapter 3084. Both Ji Tianxing and Grand Prince Lien had noticed the 1,000 feet blood saber when it appeared. When the two of them saw Blood Blade's appearance, they had different reactions. Prince Lien immediately frowned. A haze covered his eyes as a bad premonition welled up in his heart. He wanted to stop it, but it was too late. As he expected, the blood blade easily chopped off the heads of the 2 royal experts. Although it was not fatal, it had destroyed the bodies of the 2 royal experts, making them unable to continue fighting. On the other hand, Ji Tianxing's brows relaxed as a hint of astonishment appeared in his eyes. It's her? Why is she here? Of course he could recognize the blade light. It was from Demon Blade Lin Shui. But he was surprised. Why did Lin Shui come to Royal City? Moreover, he had even rushed to help him at this crucial moment? Was it a coincidence? It shouldn't be, right? At the same time, the destruction of the 2 royal experts' bodies also shocked the other 4. They were all shocked and retreated in fear. They looked at the blood blade light vigilantly. Swoosh. The 3,000-meter-long blood saber dissipated, revealing a graceful figure. It was a beautiful woman with a seductive temperament. She was wearing a dark purple dress and her bare feet were bare as she stood proudly in the sky. His white hair, which reached his waist, fluttered in the wind. She was holding a blood blade that was 3 feet long and shaped like a crescent moon. What a seductive woman. She was the blood blade sex master Lin Shui, who had the titles of White-Haired Demon Blade and Blood Blade Demon Girl. Although she was only a senior divine monarch, his strength and realm were on par with the experts of the imperial palace, but he was not much stronger than them. Although they were both in the 7th degree realm, their foundation and talent were very different. Lin Shui was the world-famous blood blade sex master. Countless immortals trembled in fear. As for the royal experts, they were not famous. Moreover, Lin Shui had reached the 7th degree realm 1,000 years ago. Now she was at the limit of the 7th degree realm. No. Ji Tianxing suddenly realized that Lin Shui had broken through. She was now an 8th degree divine monarch. Moreover, the blood blade in her hand was a top-grade monarch-grade artifact. It was easy to kill the two royal experts. There was dead silence between heaven and earth. The air seemed to have solidified and the atmosphere was incomparably heavy. Prince Lian and the 4 inner palace masters all stared at Shui Lin with gloomy eyes, not daring to act rashly. But Shui Lin ignored them. She held the demon sword that was 3 times longer than her in her right hand. She stepped on the sky barefoot and flew to Zhenhong. She sized up Zhenhong a few times before looking over Zhenhong's shoulder. Her gaze then fell on Ji Tianxing. The corners of his mouth curled up into a mocking smile as he said in a light tone, "Brat, are you fated to fall in love? Why is it that wherever you go you attract bees and butterflies and you never lack beauties by your side?" Shui Lin's eyes and tone were a bit weird, and there was a hint of jealousy in her teasing. Not to mention Ji Tianxing, even the simple-minded girl Zhenhong felt a little uncomfortable. Ahem. Ji Tianxing pretended to cough twice to hide his awkwardness. He cupped his hands and bowed. "Sect leader Lin, how have you been?" Shui Lin waved her hand and said indifferently, "The Crimson Blade sect has been disbanded and I'm no longer the sect leader. Call me sister." Not only Ji Tianxing was stunned, but Zhenhong was also stunned and looked at her strangely. As for Prince Lian and the 4 inner palace masters, they felt that it was ridiculous. What was this? We were fighting a bloody battle and we were fighting to the death. You two are flirting in public? That's not appropriate, is it? Ji Tianxing did not know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head and said, "Although I'm very grateful for your help at the critical moment, I can't comply with your request. Also, do you know what happened in King City? Have you thought about the consequences of saving me so rashly?" Shui Lin grabbed a lock of white hair with her left hand and played with it between her fingers. She said indifferently, "How can I not know? I'm the one who understands you the best. Before you entered King City, I already guessed that you were going to cause trouble. However, I really didn't expect you to be so daring as to dig up someone's sacred tree. I've never met someone as arrogant as you in my life. So, of course, I couldn't just sit by and watch you get surrounded, so I came to save you as fast as I could." Although Shui Lin said it casually, Ji Tianxing and Zhenhong could guess. She must have had a premonition and she was very worried. Ji Tianxing took a deep look at her, then cupped his hands and bowed with sincerity. "Shui Lin, I can't thank you enough. I'll remember this favor. What do you want?" Shui Lin frowned and said angrily, "You want me to cover for you while you run away with this beauty and live in seclusion to have children?" Ji Tianxing almost vomited blood. Zhenhong also blushed and could not help but remind her, "Sect leader Shui Lin, you've misunderstood. My name is Zhenhong and I'm young master's maid." Shui Lin waved her hand disapprovingly and glared at Ji Tianxing. She said fiercely, "Kid, the reason I disbanded the Blood Blade sect was to find you. I have nothing to do now, and seeing that you're so daring, I'll follow you to the ends of the world. You owe me a lot, so don't even think about getting rid of me." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said with a playful smile, "I'm now the public enemy of the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom. Are you sure you want to follow me? When the time comes, there won't be any wandering or romantic nights. There will only be endless hunting and running around. Have you thought it through?" Shui Lin nodded without hesitation. "Isn't this more interesting? I'm not from the Bloodfire Divine Kingdom and I've never thought of staying here." The two of them reminisced in front of everyone as if there was no end to it. Grand Prince Lian finally couldn't take it anymore. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot and his eyes flashed coldly. "Are you done?" he shouted angrily. "Do you think I don't exist? Why are you talking so much?" Shui Lin turned to look at him and sized him up. She sneered and said, "I know you. You're that useless prince from the great Yan Empire. Your brother failed to seize the throne and he and your mother were killed by the emperor. You, on the other hand, survived and were sent here by the emperor. Before Xuelin could finish, Grand Prince Lian's eyes widened, and his entire body was filled with rage and killing intent. You bitch, you're asking for it. That incident was his reverse scale, and it was the deepest pain and humiliation in his heart. He would never allow anyone to mention it. Xuelin was fearless and didn't take Grand Prince Lian seriously at all. She raised her right hand and pointed the demon knife at Grand Prince Lian. She sneered. Although you're very strong, I'm not your match. However, with your current appearance, it's not difficult for me to kill you. Grand Prince Lian was so angry that his face turned green. He sneered and said, "What an ignorant shrew. Do you really think that you can stop me and save Tianxing on your own?" You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.